Hello and welcome to Double Feature Reviews. I'm Libby.
I'm David.
Today is the 2025 triple feature, and we are talking about Nosferatu, Nosferatu, and Nosferatu.
Happy Halloween, everyone.
I did sit through another round of scary-ish movies for the pod. Next Halloween, we need to do like a sort of like cozy fall vibe. No more monsters.
So we want to do a scary movie that's primarily about a cozy fall vibe next year.
October encompasses many things. It doesn't just have to be scary.
I thought this was our special Halloween episode that we do in October.
Right.
It's supposed to be spooky.
Halloween doesn't have to be spooky.
Halloween doesn't have to be spooky.
Yeah.
That's the message we want
I
to
mean,
send
the
here.
show we watch every year on Halloween is not particularly spooky.
Not particularly.
It's way more cozy.
We watch Over the Garden Wall every year, which in a way tries to qualify itself for the horror genre.
I think, like, it is, to a certain extent, marketed at, like, 8-year-olds. And it might be scary for them. I did watch it with my mom. And in the first episode, she was like, this is for kids? This is scary. But maybe that is what we will be watching for our next Halloween episode. So we can't talk about it too much now. David, had you seen any of the Nosferatu films before?
I had seen none of the Nosferatus. I had seen not one of them.
Yeah, me neither. I did definitely hear about the Eggers Nosferatu because it was very buzzy when it came out last year. And I had never actually seen the Murnau Nosferatu, but it does have a very important place in cinema history, vampire lore, and copyright law. None of which is my favorite thing, but these are all things that I'm moderately interested in. So I definitely knew about it. And I have read the novel Dracula, which these are not based on, but based on.
Yeah, we might even say increasingly based on, or increasingly explicitly based on. So I had read Bram Stoker's Dracula, and it's honestly one of my favorite books.
Okay.
I'm a huge fan of Bram Stoker's Dracula. I have confessed in the past my love for epistolary content and the like, and it's an excellent example of this. And I think it's really underrated as an action novel, and I really like how the multiple perspectives that you're given in different timelines weave together to create an immersive narrative and to match the theme of the story about a team coming together to accomplish a goal. So I actually really like that book. It's maybe probably my top 5 19th century books.
Yeah, I definitely like Dracula. I wouldn't say I love Dracula, the novel. It's been several years since I read it, so I maybe need a refresh. But I think most people think the novel has this important place in literary history because it establishes vampire lore. I don't think that's true. The reason it has an important place in literary history is because of its format, which is sort of multimedia.
Yes.
We're getting transcripts of audio notes that people have made to themselves. We're getting letters, we're getting diaries, we're getting a ship's log, which is my favorite part. The rest of Dracula, fine, whatever. The captain's log of the ship taking Dracula to England. I want a short film of just that. I think it's excellent. The right amount of scary.
I mean, you can just clip that part out of these 3 movies and you basically got what you wanted.
Right, but I feel like if you're a director making,
We want them to play up the captain's log element.
Yeah, I want
see.
it a little bit longer, and I want all the effort to be in that.
That sounds great. Yeah, I think the Dracula novel is really underrated for the quality of the writing. I just think that it's written for a 19th century book. It's written in such an accessible and dynamic way.
Well, it is a really late 19th century book.
Well, fair enough. But, I remember reading this and I'd be like, wow, this is an old book that I like reading, which is something that didn't happen to me a lot in my life. So I'm a big fan. I think the best part is another piece which is not really included in these movies, but does, I think, influence it significantly, which is the part where the house guest realizes that, or begins to suspect that Dracula is his own servants when he discovers him setting the table, having implied that they were servants setting the table, and he sort of feels sorry for him. And he's like, well, Dracula's kind of lonely. He doesn't have anyone to spend time with. And of course, he ends up being mostly evil for most of the book.
Mm-hmm.
But that feeling of recognizing this evil person and sort of, well, let's just think about things from their perspective for just a second is a small but important part of Dracula novel, and definitely is a big part of these movies.
I actually don't think it's a big part of all of these movies, but we'll get into it.
I had not seen any of these movies, but interestingly, I had seen a film, another remake
A
of these
fictional
movies.
making of?
Well, I've seen that too. So I have
Oh, okay.
seen Shadow of the Vampire, also featuring Willem Dafoe, this time as Orlok. And
As Max Schreck.
well,
Yes.
yes, correct,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah, Max Schreck plays Orlok in the first Nosferatu, and Willem Dafoe plays the Van Helsing character in the last Nosferatu.
And I had also seen the 2020 Nosferatu,
Don't know about this one.
which is a remake of the silent film that is more faithful to the silent film. I hadn't seen the silent film, but it was more faithful to the silent film, and actually is created by taking the silent film images and then like layering new actors on top of them with sound dialogue.
Okay, so it's like they green screened
Yes.
the sets,
Yes.
and they just put new actors in front of the old actors, and they're delivering
That's kind
dialogue.
of the idea.
Is it in English or German?
It's in English.
Is it good?
No.
Okay.
Doug Jones is Orlok.
Okay, that's his job.
So they cast a natural choice there. It has a certain community theater vibe.
Okay.
And in that one, like Jonathan, we'll go with as his name right now, is bad. Like he's cheating on his wife and stuff, and so he's sort
Okay.
of naughty. And that's part of it.
Yeah, I'm not sure that works.
Yep.
And as is customary in this podcast, we each come up with a title for what the sort of marquee would be saying if a theater was showing these three films, as in this case, a triple feature. I found this one kind of difficult because this is the first time we've done films that are remakes of each other, which I think is kind of surprising that we've gone almost 2 years into this and we've never done remakes. Yes, obviously there are a lot of similarities in the plot and themes of these stories, so I went kind of meta. Is it okay if I go first?
Sure, go for it.
And I am calling this triple feature The Limits and Opportunities of Copyright. David, what are you calling the triple feature?
I'm calling the triple feature Power, Plague, and Pleasure. I think it'll become clear that I take a realist approach to horror fantasy. Horror is not my favorite genre or anything, but I do think it's most interesting as a way to discuss and highlight what real life things are people afraid of and how do they express those fears through fantasy. And I think these films, the goals of these films are different in that they are trying to represent people's fear of different things. I think the first film is to some extent in the original idea of vampire fiction, where it's really about a fear of feudal absolutism and a culture where there's this count that can make you do things that people don't really want to do. And to some extent maybe influenced by the First World War and the continuing political conflicts about whether or not Europe was going to be a monarchical absolutist country or continent or not. The second film is about people's fear of communicable disease, maybe even sexually transmitted disease. And I think you can see that coming through here. And then the third film is really a fear of the self and the self's desire for pleasure. And it's an expression of the increasingly conservative sexual mores of the United States and people's fear of their own pleasure and their own desire. These horrific images don't just come out of nowhere. They are a representation of things that people really do fear in real life.
You mentioned the history of vampire lore there, and you said you read Dracula. Have you read Carmilla by J.
I've
Sheridan
not read
McMahon?
Carmilla.
Okay. You might like it. Do you know anything about it?
No.
Okay. One, lesbian vampires. It's
a lesbian vampire
it's
one. I know about that.
Pre-Dracula.
Yeah.
It's 1870s, so about 20 years earlier. It also might have some relevance here because Dracula, in Bram Stoker's Dracula, the vampire bites you in the neck. In Carmilla, the vampire bites you on the breast is the term, like in the chest, which is what we end up with in Eggers' Nosferatu. And I haven't read the Polidori novel, The Vampire, which is the first literary installment in vampire fiction. Obviously, there was folklore going back earlier. So I don't know if Polidori's vampire bites you in the neck or the chest.
It's kind of difficult to have a good summary of this series, both because there is a lot of content and a lot of it is the same.
But
So
not all of it.
I think I'm going to give a summary in general of what this movie, this singular film that is shared between all three, is first. And so my overall summary is something like a pretty lady with a cat becomes overwhelmed with fear when her husband is sent to help a mysterious Transylvanian count that she has a psychic connection with move in across the street from them.
I want to point out that Ellen in the Murnau Nosferatu does not have a psychic connection. She is not special. And I actually really like that.
Well, I can't remember shot by shot, but I thought she did get magic vampire messages even in the first one.
I don't think so. And just in case anybody doesn't know, the Murnau Nosferatu, the 1922 one, was supposed to be an adaptation of the novel Dracula, but he couldn't get the rights to reproduce the novel. So after a lot of at least the prep work and possibly some filming had been done, Murnau sort of did the minimum amount of reworking necessary in order to have this story be technically different than Dracula. And you can see that there are some elements that don't really make sense in this story, but that are definitely from the Dracula story, like sitting on the beach. Germany does have beaches, but not a lot, and it doesn't really make sense for someone on one of the northern coasts of Germany to be going all the way to Transylvania. Bavaria is much closer. And I think that's clearly a reference to the beach scenes in England, where several scenes take place in Whitby.
Yeah, the second film in the series, the Herzog's from 1979, goes out of its way to make clear that Dracula is arriving by boat and is arriving on that beach. For good or for bad reasons. I don't know enough about 19th century trade networks. But yeah, the theme of travel and the methodology of travel becomes a big deal in that one. The stories are all pretty different, but at the end of each of them, after the lady discovers that there's a prophecy, the only way to defeat Orlok is for a pure woman to willingly give herself up for an all-night feeding, luring him into the deadly sunlight, she does so, killing them both. I think that's maybe the biggest difference between this version and the Dracula version. In fact, it appears that Murnau intentionally changed this to have a clear reason to say that his story is different than the Dracula version. That in Dracula, there are female characters that have a lot of agency in killing Dracula. You know, it's not totally an invention there. But this thing of just sort of willingly giving themselves to the monster, that is definitely a new element. That is the trademark of what makes Nosferatu a different story than Dracula. Well, the 1922 version is shot in a expressionistic and tableau-like style.
As one would expect from the 1920s.
The 1979 version is shot in a dreamlike and painterly style. In the first scene, there is a bit of a difference because we get to see some spooky mummies. We just watch some spooky mummies.
Which are, I believe, real-life mummies.
Oh, they're real mummies.
When I was watching them, I thought they were fake.
Nope.
And then I found out later they were real, and I didn't like that.
There's more mummies coming up. In the final scene of the 1979 version, when it's feeding time, she's into it. That's one difference.
Well, let's talk about that when we get to it.
And another difference is that when she and Orlok die, the husband completes a transformation into a vampire. And he's the vampire now, and he takes Orlok's clothes and his dominating personality. In the 2024 version, which is shot in a desaturated and chiaroscuro style, in the first scene, the woman calls out to Orlok, begging him to come to her and bring her comfort.
Not specifically to Orlok. I don't think she wanted him. She calls for an angel of mercy or an angel of comfort.
I mean, later on, it's revealed that she and Orlok have had this connection for a long time.
Right, that's after she did that. The first scene is years earlier. But you can tell that because there's a title card that says years later afterwards.
No, but they said that they established a connection like when she was an adolescent.
Yeah, so that's the shot when she's an adolescent.
That's not her when she's an adolescent.
Yes, it is. I promise.
I think that's a shot of like 5 years before the events of this film. I don't think she's
I think she
20
was
years
an
old.
adolescent 5 years before the events of this film. Let's see how old Lily Rose Depp is.
That's an interesting question.
Lily Rose Depp is 26. So she was 24 or 25 when this film came out. Hollywood often casts people who are a little bit older than
Sure.
characters actually are. So I think 5 years before she was an adolescent. She was a teenager.
In the final scene, they're both naked. And there may have been more than feeding going on.
I think there certainly was more than feeding going on.
Okay, well, yeah, we can see the temperature is heating up as we move forward in time. We said a lot of nice things about Bram Stoker's Dracula. I think maybe something that needs to be said that's not very nice about it is that it's really a very anti-feminist book.
Yes.
And the theme of the book is that, like, oh no, women are making their own choices, and they might even get the hots for some feudal Romanian guy, and that would be bad. It's a fear of the new woman book. That is the theme of this book. And so I think the films are engaging with that. Maybe even in the 1922 version, trying to push back against it to some extent.
Yeah.
I think they're trying to take a more feminist slant on what is a very anti-feminist original story.
Yeah, so that's part of why I picked my title, The Limits and Opportunities of Copyright. So I think, in general, copyright is limiting. I think, if we just want to talk about my opinion of copyright law, I would love if there was no copyright law whatsoever. I recognize that the other side does have some reasonable arguments, all of which I think can be addressed by a copyright that lasts 20 to 25 years. I see no reason for copyright to last longer than that. And if that had been the case, if it had been 20 years, Murnau would have had no problem. But the reason I wanted to highlight the opportunities of copyright is I think in this particular instance, I think Murnau made a better film by having to make changes than if he had just done the Dracula story.
I appreciate that a lot of times you can make something better by iterating as opposed to just copying. I don't know. I'm no fan of copyright myself, and I think I guess I have to push back against that idea a little bit in that if copyright hadn't been enforced from the beginning, then there would have already been so many copies, variations of the original story by the time this happened, that I don't think there would have been the same assumption that if you were to make an adaptation of the original, that you would be expected to follow it step by step, and you could have been adopting this broader mythos that it had more quickly established. Yeah, I mean, I think that's maybe one of the things that I think people mistake when we were talking about getting rid of copyright or reforming copyright, is that if you get rid of copyright, people are not mainly just going to repeat the same story over and over again. They're going to gradually change it one little piece at a time. And one of the things that makes copyright harmful, and I'm not saying you disagree, is that it really limits people's ability to create new things, because every new thing is based on old things. So if you just let people constantly create without limits, then they're going to naturally evolve the story, I think, in a very smooth way from the beginning. Yeah. So I think that's a nice story, but it doesn't make me feel any better about copyright.
Also, one last thing about sort of the technicalities of these films. I do believe that Nosferatu, Eine Symphonie des Grauens, the 22 one, is the oldest feature film I have ever seen. I've seen some shorts that are older, but I don't think I've seen any features that are pre-1922. Have you?
I'm struggling to think of a particular one. Maybe I have, but I don't know. I'm not a huge silent film fan, so I don't think I have it all cataloged. I don't know. Maybe. Here we are doing a film podcast, and neither of us have seen Intolerance. I don't know that we're qualified living.
If you can be disqualified from doing a film podcast for not having seen certain famous films, I would have been kicked off long ago. So we've maybe a little bit gotten ahead of ourselves. Let's talk about who was actually involved in the creation of these films. So in Nosferatu, A Symphony of Horror, this is a 1922 film. It was directed by F.W. Murnau. It was written by Henrik Galeen, with, in some versions, credit given to Bram Stoker for writing the original novel, and in some cases not. There were different prints of Nosferatu where they, after they had lost the copyright battle, but just sort of decided they didn't care, they did make some changes to to the text cards to make it more similar to Dracula, but I think that's not normally the version people watch now. It stars Max Schreck as Graf Orlok, Gustav von Wagenheim as Hutter, Greta Schroeder as Ellen, Alexander Granach as Knock, and John Gottout. I'm not totally sure I'm saying that correctly, and I couldn't find any interviewers saying his name, as Professor Bulwer.
So I think we have to call out a little bit about what was going on in the world at this time. This is very shortly after the end of World War One, and a lot of the people involved in making this movie had served in World War One. It's also very shortly after the Spanish flu epidemic, which was one of the most devastating plagues of the last 200 years. So, those were two really sad things that were going on that involved a lot of people being up close to a lot of death and destruction. And I think it's undeniable you can see that as an influence thematically and visually in the film. So Albin Grau, who is the producer of this film, and probably the original creative force behind it happening, was an avowed occultist and was a leading figure of the European occultist movement. Kind of probably the most prominent European occultist at this time.
Crowley was dead? Or Crowley wasn't
No.
big yet? Pre-Crowley.
Crowley was big at this time.
Okay.
And he and Crowley were kind of friends, but kind of rivals.
Okay.
And he was kind of like, guys, I think Crowley is evil. I think Crowley is the evil occultist, and I'm the good occultist. I feel weird about that, but that was how things kind of... There was a big occultist conference after the making of this movie, and they got in a big fight, and the occultist movement split apart. So yeah, no, he was the anti-Crowley.
Okay.
And so, yeah, he really believed in the story of this film. And he wanted to...
Okay, he's like, vampires are real.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And he wanted to produce a whole series of films based on occult ideas. Now, who knows what this person really thought on their inner mind, and whatever. I think a lot of people in the occult world are having a good time with it. That is what it is. So I don't know what he was really thinking, but he planned to make a whole series of films to sort of sell what he had learned about occult, all this cool stuff he found that he knew people would find entertaining. Maybe also to warn them about evil demons so that they didn't spend too much time with evil demons. Like Aleister Crowley probably did or whatever. There is a lot of real occultist stuff in the film. The letters that Canuck and Orlok send back and forth are written in Enochian, which is a 18th century secret magic language that was supposed to be delivered to humans by angels. So they didn't just make that up for the movie. That's a real thing. I
do want to point out in the letter that Canuck receives, the first one that we see, I think there's maybe only one. Maybe there's two. It does have a Vegvisir on it, which is often considered a symbol of like ancient Norse magic. It's not. It's in a 19th century text. So I wanted to straighten out the Vegvisir misinformation.
Well, apparently it's part of Enochian as part of it. So
I think it was just also a different symbol on there. It's not
not part of the letter.
It doesn't look like a letter.
Okay.
It's a circle with arrows.
There's also a reference to Orlok being a servant of Belial, which is a biblical or pseudo-biblical demon that's associated with pestilence and plague, and was also a famous target of German sorcerers and magicians. It's kind of implied through all of this that Orlok became a vampire because when he was a human, he did dark magic and made a pact with the demon Belial. That's, I think, how we're supposed to put the pieces together there. Okay. So yeah, Grau wanted us to know, don't do that. Do not make pacts with Belial. He's bad. I think it's also worth emphasizing that vampires were not pop culture at the time. There had been some stories that happened to be written about them, but they were not a trope, a cliche, or even a very hot topic until this movie came out. The film was shot from August to October 1921 in Germany, although they somewhat famously shot the castle scenes on location in Slovakia. Even though it wasn't a big budget film, they went and traveled there because Murnau thought that to give them the creepy aesthetic they needed. Yeah, for budgetary reasons, they only had one camera for the whole thing and only one negative to produce the whole film. So don't break the camera, don't lose the negative. Murnau has very exacting, precise directing style, and he would use a metronome to control the pace and timing of the acting, so it all come out exactly the way he wanted. And this is the first piece of vampire lore to establish that vampires die if they are come in contact with sunlight, which is, of course, a big part of the plot of the
modern
movie,
vampire
and
lore.
is so much about modern vampire lore. In the Dracula novel, he's like weakened by sunlight. He doesn't like it, but he just doesn't like it.
Does he have to sleep in ancestral soil? I think
Yeah,
he does.
yeah, that's part of it. And in the novel, like Van Helsing is always going around trying to destroy all of his ancestral stories. That's sort of the main mission point of that video game that you have to go through is destroy 10 ancestral coffins. So yeah, that's definitely part of it.
Yeah, so he has to like sleep during the day.
Yes. He does sleep during the day. He does not like going out during the day, but it's kind of just like that's his nighttime. He's tired.
Okay, his sleep is a normal human-like sleep, not a return to a dead state.
I don't know. He does have to do it in his ancestral soil, but the key point is he can go out in sunlight if he wants to.
Okay.
In the novel, certainly not in this film. Yeah, Max Schrank received a lot of attention. The film was received pretty well when it came out. It was released in December of 1922. We don't know how much money it made in the box office.
Merry Christmas.
Oh, that's where there's going to be more. And yeah, Max Schreck got a lot of attention. Max Schreck got a lot of attention. People thought he was really scary.
Since we just commented on his name, maybe you don't know the answer to this. Is Shrek the DreamWorks character named for Max Schreck? It is spelled differently.
I mean, they both are bald and are considered scary.
Yeah.
So, well, like Shrek the Disney, the
not
DreamWorks,
Disney.
Sorry,
really specifically not Disney.
That's right.
You can never work at Disney or Pixar now, David. I'm so sorry. Not
like
Pixar,
Shrek, the
DreamWorks
character, people I think have been really mean to Max Schreck because he has been presented as this like truly, genuinely scary person. Mm-hmm. Like we mentioned a little bit from at the beginning, there is another story Nosferatu film out there, Shadow of the Vampire, which is a fictional adaptation of the making of the Murnau version, which basically makes very clear that Shrek really was a vampire, and he was an evil vampire. That's Willem Dafoe. He's playing Shrek, and he was truly Count Orlok. And the plot of the movie is that Murnau hires the real Orlok to come in and be his vampire, and that's why the story is so authentic. And then at the end, he ends up like killing the other actors and stuff.
Wild.
It's not a great movie, even though it has one of my favorite casts of all time. It's got John Malkovich, Cary Elwes, Eddie Izzard, Willem Dafoe, all of whom I'm huge fans of. And it's not well directed. And I kind of hate this mythology that's emerged that Max Schreck was a real vampire, because he was really just kind of a quiet person who had served in World War I and clearly suffered a lot of post-traumatic stress disorder and kind of wanted to be left alone, and he would take a lot of long walks in the woods. And from this, we have decided that he was a real vampire, and then in the film, he's not a cool, fun, empathetic, sexy vampire. He's just an evil, evil vampire. So, yeah. But people were scared of Max Schreck. Now, of course, it's worth noting that one of the reasons they're so scared of him is that throughout, except for I think one time in all of his scenes, Max Schreck was clearly directed not to blink in this movie and doesn't blink at all in the film.
This apparently is way more common than I thought it was. This is our third character who's not allowed to blink.
Do you think that improved the film? Libby, are you a fan of I know you're normally maybe not a huge fan of the do not blink direction.
I think maybe in this case it would work. I would want to watch it closely again and see if he is visibly breathing. If he's visibly breathing,
he is visibly breathing.
Then you gotta also let him blink. I mean, for our other two characters who aren't allowed to blink, Mrs. Danvers is a normal human who's just kind of sinister and doesn't like this one lady. She's allowed to blink. And the other one, David from AI, is a robot who could have been programmed to blink. He's a robot who's supposed to be appealing to humans. And one thing that humans don't like is when people never blink. So I think this is a manufacturing issue. If I was playing a vampire in a film, if the director didn't say anything to me about blinking, one of the things I would try to do would be to consciously blink. Like maybe Why are you laughing at me?
I'm not laughing at you. What I'm thinking is, yeah, from now on, if I ever get an acting role, the first thing I'm going to do is go to the director and say, look, am I supposed to blink or not? Tell me right now. Don't come to me at the last second and say, oh, apparently this is the whole thing. So am I
Do I
supposed
need
to
to
blink?
get eye drops?
Do I need to get eye drops?
I want eye drops in the contract if I'm not
This is
allowed
now
to
my
blink.
top priority. That's right. If I'm negotiating, I'm like, look, put in the contract that I am allowed to blink. Okay, I'm trying to protect my
And if
long-term
not,
health.
you have to buy the eye drops.
That's right.
Yeah, so I would be like, okay, this person is dead. They don't biologically need to blink. They're not moisturizing their eyes with anything. So I'm only blinking to blend in. A lot of times when we see Orlok, he's not trying to blend in. A lot of times we see him by himself. Or when he's like, hello, I'm obviously a vampire.
Yeah, I think the only time he could be described as trying to blend in is when he is the coachman that picks up.
Or when he first meets Jonathan.
I guess so.
Jonathan.
You're right.
Hutter, whatever we're calling him.
Hutter, yes.
We're going to mix up what the names are because the films did, and I'm so sorry.
Yeah, in the original German version, he is named Hutter. In the original English language releases, he was often renamed to either Jonathan or Thomas.
Mm-hmm.
Both names were used. So Hutter, Jonathan, Thomas, all technically correct from the beginning.
And Ellen was renamed to either Mina or Lucy.
That's right.
Knock was renamed to Renfield. So, yeah. And then that officially happened in the Herzog version, and then we went back to the original Murnau names in the Eggers
Well,
version.
in the Eggers version, he is Thomas, not
Thomas Hutter.
Thomas Hutter, yes.
Yeah. We had to give him a first name.
I think in the original German version, Hutter is supposed to be his first name. But
I think
later
his
on,
wife is referred to as Frau Hutter.
Oh, is that right?
I think so. I'm not certain.
All right.
Hutter is not a first name, so.
Okay. So yeah, when the movie came out, people thought it was scary. They were like, "That's scary." It was banned in Sweden for being too scary.
For being too scary.
Too scary.
Okay.
They're gonna kill all the children or something.
Yeah. For I think you're probably going to talk about this a little bit later, but if you watch this film as a modern movie watcher, it's going to seem kind of like weird, cheesy, overstated. And part of that is because they didn't have all of the sophisticated film language that we have now on the director's end. But also part of that is because audiences didn't understand how to watch a film. So like 10 years or so before this film came out, when people saw a film of a train coming towards them, they would jump out of the way because they thought a train was going to hit them. So you had to be a little bit more direct in explaining to people, like, how do these shots spatially and temporally relate to each other?
You know, I also think that people just were looking for something different from movies at the time. Mm-hmm. And we talked about this a little bit in our discussion of Rebecca, which is a sound film, but is both of those films were made by directors who started out in the silent era. And in silent film, the audience experience is supposed to be more similar to like scrolling a web page full of meme gifs. Mm-hmm. And the purpose of the film is not to present an immersive, naturalistic thing that makes you feel like it's really happening, but it's actually to present a series of highly exaggerated and emphasized human reactions and feelings and comedic or dramatic setups. So people are not there to be presented with something that looks real. They want something where each moment is cranked up to 11. That is the idea of that experience.
And then you use the text cards to actually communicate the plot to people.
Yeah, it's really a series of memes that link together to form a story, not one smooth narrative. And yeah, the Stoker estate was not happy. Bram was dead, so his wife said, I did not get my money from this movie. They tried to say that it's fine because she gives herself up willingly at the end, and the judges said that does not count. So all known reels of this film were destroyed, and it was believed to be lost. Now, there was actually been widely distributed, so it was later reconstructed from secondhand films, but they tried to kill this movie. The film was received well originally, and of course its reputation has only grown. It's now one of the most famous movies of all time. It currently holds a 97% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, and it has an IMDb score of 7.8 with 121,000 votes. Mm-hmm. So that's a very good score on a lot of votes. It is on the Vatican's list of the top 45 films of all time.
Ooh, the Pope loves it.
So the Vatican also thinks you should not make a pact with the demon Belial.
Okay.
They agree. They were like, finally a movie that represents our perspective.
What does the Pope think about the new one?
No comment.
Okay.
Why do you think cats are so emphasized at the beginning of each of these movies, and certainly in the 1922 version?
Yeah. Well, for the second two, I think it's because there are cats in the first one.
Fair.
For the first one, I think it's because everyone loves a little kitty. And we're trying to, up front, way before it becomes relevant, we are establishing Ellen as eine sinnlos Weib, a sinless wife. Although I had to go check the German text for what type of person is able to stop the Nosferatu from returning to his ancestral soil and dying in the sunlight. Because in English, the version we were watching said a pure maiden. And I was like, well, Ellen doesn't qualify for that. She's married. So this is, I don't know what was going on in the English translators' minds. In the German text, she specifically has to not be a virgin. She's a sinless wife. So I like that. I'm totally here for a non-virgin sacrifice. So the first scene is meant to establish that Ellen is sinless. She is a pure person. So she takes care of a nice little kitty. She is sad. She's so pure that she's sad when the flowers are picked. And then we don't really have to do any more establishing of her purity throughout the film because we just did it right up top.
Yes, even in 1922, we start our films with a save the cat moment to establish.
The cat's fine. She's just
right.
She's playing.
You're right.
Playing. She's got a little
long-term save the cat moment
thing on a stick, and the kitty's hitting it.
I think that's totally fair. Yeah, I mean, I think there is a symbolic side here. You know, part of what people fear traditionally about vampires is really them expressing their fear of disease, of real diseases, especially rabies. Vampires and rabies are really closely linked. Rabies makes you more lustful, more violent, makes your skin pale, makes you stay up at night. There are a lot of similarities, and that's part of the reason why vampire lore is something that's all over the world, is that rabies is all over the world. And cats, famously, they do not transmit rabies from cat to cat. Cats are very rabies resistant. They actually can certainly get rabies. And cats also kill mice and other things that spread contagious diseases. And so I think part of what's happening here is that this whole series has an interesting, perhaps even hostile relationship to nature. There is this kind of idea throughout the film that nature is actually a threat that we have to protect ourselves from. And, you know, if you just trust nature, oh, it's so pretty, it's so nice, well, some parts of it are nice and some parts of it are not nice. And you need to make sure you align yourself with the right part. And yeah, I think we're now saying cats,
Cat's good,
rats
bad.
good, rats bad.
Nova approves of this.
Nova is our cat. And yeah, I think that she would really appreciate a story where cats are the heroes. And it is only because they are truly moral and that they defeat those evil mice that they protect humanity from pestilence. I think she'd be into it. From the beginning, we also see that this is like The Artist is not a silent film. This is not a black and white movie.
No, and a lot of prints are black and white. So if you're watching it, make sure you're getting the different, I don't know, gels. I don't know how they would have technically done this.
It's not a gel. They're actually tinting and toning the film itself. It is dyed.
Okay.
It is dyed. So yeah, I really agree with that you need to watch the dyed version for a couple reasons. First of all, the tinting and toning is some of the best visual part of this movie. It actually is really immersive and exciting, and when you switch from one tint to the other tint, it always means something. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, but it really does draw you in and pull you closer to what's happening in the story. Yeah. And also, it was very much intended to be displayed that way. That was part of how it was directed to be displayed. And for example, a lot of the night scenes, if they don't have the blue tinting, it's really obvious they're being filmed during the day. You can see, they just don't look like it.
In order to get the light on the actors to be able to see them, the cameras weren't good enough to film at night. So you filmed during the day and then put a blue tint on it.
So it's very intentionally meant to be shown with that tinting, and I was really impressed by how much more entertaining and immersive it made it. I kind of am, and of course I like even modern movies that do this, but I kind of wish there were more modern movies that we've discussed before that would embrace full frame saturation as a way to express themselves. I think it's underrated.
So you love South Pacific?
I do love South Pacific. I've been
Okay.
very upfront about
A
that.
lot of people think that the dying,
And they're wrong.
On
That's a gel.
but no, I think that they couldn't undo it.
Okay, I don't know.
I think it was dyed.
I mean, as I understood it in South Pacific, they're putting a gel on the lens.
I can't remember exactly what happens, but
Okay.
I think I think what happened was they had the film and they were like, we want certain scenes to be more yellow or more red, and they dyed them, and then it came out and everyone was like, oh, this looks really bad, but it's too late, we dyed the negatives.
I mean, I think we could critique South Pacific in the exact application of this concept. It is quite heavy-handed there, and maybe could have been more thoughtfully placed.
Yeah.
I don't think the problem with South Pacific personally is that it's too heavy-handed. I do think it's sometimes imprecise. But no, I think it's great.
Yeah.
I love it.
One question I had about vampire lore in this movie, maybe you don't know the answer, is this the first time we're seeing a vampire where it's the incisors that are the biting teeth? Because I believe canonically in the novel Dracula and in basically every other vampire film I've seen, it's the canines that are the biting teeth. And in Carmilla, I don't think the teeth are special, just normal human teeth biting into your chest.
Okay, yeah. I don't know.
Which is what Eggers does. The teeth are normal in the Eggers film.
I don't even remember how Stoker calls out the teeth.
Yeah, I believe it's canines that are long.
But you're both in this film and in the 1979 version, they do really emphasize that it's the incisors that grow. Although in the 2024 version, he just has sort of monster alien teeth all around.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Did we get a good
Yeah,
view
at
of
the
his
end,
teeth?
he goes, ah.
Okay, I might have.
I think you might have not been watching that
I might have
part.
not been
I
watching
think
that
you might
part.
have not been watching
Okay.
that part. But yeah, we do get in the scary part, we really get into those teeth.
It does make him look more rat-like, so I don't know if that was an intention there. More rat-like, less dog-like.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely still associated with werewolves. I guess.
He has pet werewolves, but I think maybe he
Yeah.
is a rat. Or I think bats are the animal that he's most associated with in the Nosferatu films.
And I think bats have fangs.
They're incisory.
I don't know.
I mean, there's also a bunch of different types of bats.
My favorite character in all three versions is Canuck.
I knew you were going to say that.
I really love the Canuck character because Canuck gets to start on the inside of the mystery. My least favorite part of all of these movies are people who are like, is this a vampire? Is this some sort of magic? But magic's not real. But also it seems like it is real because he's murdering everybody. Okay, that's fine. We get it. I, in fact, know that he's a vampire. I don't need that. So the Canuck character is great because the Canuck character begins inside the process. And all the time we get to spend with him, he knows what's going on. He knows what the stakes are, and he has his motivations. And he is the most lively and engaging and energetic part of the movie. So I kind of wish that for all of these movies, Canuck had been the main character, and we had seen everyone else sort of through his machinations, because it is his plan that brings it all together. You know, he gets in contact with Orlok and basically seems to be saying, if you give me some of your magic powers, I will arrange for you to come here and feast upon the citizens of this town. For example, this cute Hutter family. I know you love to eat cute people, and they're adorable. Apparently this is totally unsurprising to you that I have this feeling.
Yeah, obviously you like the weirdo. The weirdo loser.
Okay.
David's favorite character.
All right.
I did find myself curious how Knock came under the influence of Dracula, of Orlok, whatever. I don't remember how Renfield in the Stoker novel came under the influence of Dracula, but I do remember not having that question. So I think it is explained in the novel. And we have no idea what's up with Knock in the Murnau film.
Actually, I think they do kind of imply it. Again, I love how they set up the character, because they say, like, yeah, people have always had these sort of suspicious... He's always kind of been a dirty guy. You know, he's always been dirty. And so I think the idea is that he's just a very selfish person, and he got into the occult, you know.
Does he have the book that Ellen reads that tells her how to... Okay.
Jonathan Hutter...
Oh, he gets it from
brings that back
from
from
the
Transylvania.
Transylvanians.
But it's implied that he's sort of into the occult and is like, how am I going to get dark powers for my evil schemes? And then he somehow gets in contact with Orlok. He's like, oh, I hear you used to be a famous sorcerer of Belial. Could I get some of that Belial power? And Orlok is like, well, if you give me a hot lady to eat, then I think we could figure something out.
I just so happen to be a real estate agent.
And he's like, I think I can arrange that. So I think it's only implied, but I do think they answered that question enough for us to connect the dots.
Also, I just want to emphasize again that Ellen is not special in the Murnau film, and that's why it's the best. To compare them for a second, in the Eggers film, it's really obvious that Ellen is special. Like, Nosferatu is in love with her. Not the right word. Not the right
Nosferatu
word.
is not in love with her.
He
He just knows he can get her.
He wants.
She's in love with him.
Question mark. He wants specifically her, and the implication is that no one else could end the plague. This is less strongly stated in the Herzog film. Like in the Murnau film, he already knows about her from when she called out to him as a teenager.
You mean the Eggers film?
Yeah. In the Eggers film, he already... Did I say the Nosferatu film?
You said the Murnau film.
Okay. There's a lot of names.
Yep.
In the Eggers film, he already knows about her from when she called out as a teenager. In the Herzog film, it seems like he didn't know about her beforehand, but he sees Jonathan's picture of her, and he's also kind of into Jonathan, and he specifically says, I want to share in the love that you and Jonathan have. So he's like, I'm specifically interested in this couple. So again, only Ellen, or in this case, her name is Lucy, can save the day. But in the Murnau, Ellen just reads a book about how to defeat the vampire, does not know that she's special in any way, because she is not special in any way, and she's like, I want to do this. And I think that's way more noble and heroic, because if I was told, Libby, thousands of people are going to die horribly unless you sacrifice yourself, I might be open to doing that. If I was told, Libby, thousands of people are going to die horribly unless someone in your cohort, which contains a couple hundred people, sacrifices themselves, I'm probably not going to do it. I'm like, well, let's ask the other 199 people if they're willing to do that first, and then maybe we'll
there's
talk
somebody
about
that
it.
kind of wants to, or
Maybe
whatever.
yeah.
Let's negotiate.
Can we let somebody else solve this problem? But Ellen is like, someone else could solve this problem, but I want to, and I like that.
Yeah, I think this is a bigger trend in cinema and fiction where people really seem to want the main character to be really special and just like a really special, important person. I guess so that they can also... I am also the main character in my life, and therefore I am also special. I mean, there's also this bigger trend in fiction about like everyone has to be deeply personally connected to each other in some inherent way. Like the president is actually the main character's mom, and then the president of Russia is the mom's secret boyfriend, and like everyone needs to be tightly personally linked, or else people will just sort of lose interest, because this isn't just basically a family personal story. So I think that's fair, and I think it's also, the later films are trying to play up more on the sexy side of the story, and the sexy side of the story is like, ooh, Ellen lets the vampire do it, and like maybe she wants to do that, and like that's like a sexy thing. And
Did you find the Burnout film sexy at all? I think it was 0% sexy.
I mean, it is kind of funny because they are, for a film in 1922, they are kissing each other relatively intimately.
Okay.
I think...
Not for a modern film, so I didn't really pick up on that.
I'm not talking about Orlok and Ellen. I'm talking about Hutter.
Yeah, in their
whatever,
first scene, when they're smooching on each other.
They're properly smooching. And I do think they are trying to let us know, I guess, that she's not a virgin. And they have a very intimate relationship. So I think that part is supposed to be a little bit sexy in kind of a fun way.
Yeah, but once Orlok shows up, none of that was hot to me.
Yeah, Orlok in this film is definitely represented less like a person and more like a sort of force of nature. Do you think that's intentional? Do you think the film is trying to say something about the nature of evil being elemental versus moral?
I think it's mainly just trying to depict him as foreign or alien, and, it's hard to do that with humans.
There are also a lot of scenes specifically about the evils of nature and how innocent looking things in nature might actually be evil. There's
Yes, the Venus
the
flytrap
Venus
shot.
flytrap shot, which we see, and then of course we get the title card afterwards, like a vampire, right? So not particularly subtle in that moment, but yeah, it does seem like there is something about, I don't know if it's not exactly platonic, but about how like good is a concept which humans bring into the world, and the world is maybe sort of more fundamentally evil, and you have to make it into something good.
I
Or
mean,
maybe that's not quite right.
Knock is definitely on the evil side and is fully human.
That's true. Yeah, it's not saying human good, nature bad.
Mm-hmm.
But there is something there about. It's not surprising that and Orlok is not presented as human, because in this version, evil is not something that's a result of bad human choices.
Mm-hmm.
Evil is something that just sort of emanates from the world that humans have to resist.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever feel sympathy for Orlok in the 1922 version? Is he is definitely monstrous. He's also kind of pathetic. You know, he can't really express himself. He can't make himself fit in social environments. He's totally outcast from that. Is he a sympathetic character in 1922?
No, I don't think so. I don't think that's the goal. Just let the scary guy be scary. Things were simpler 100 years ago. That we can talk about that more when we get to the later films, but I don't think the Max Schreck's Nosferatu is supposed to be sympathetic. I think he's supposed to be scary and alien.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's. I would say again that this version is more clearly a story about class.
Mm-hmm.
That's really the fear here. The fear is not. The fear is that in the East, from a pretty bigoted culture, but those Eastern countries are still living in feudalism,
period.
and that's really bad. They might come over here and use their feudalism wealth to corrupt modern people in Germany and the West, and use them for their evil schemes. That's, I think, what we're expressing here with this Orlok character.
Going back to the Venus flytrap scene and the microscope shot
Yep.
of whatever,
which are actually it's like blood or
no, it was
was like amoebas.
Yeah, I don't remember the scientific
These are
term.
some of the best visuals in the film. They look great, I think, and they're
Yeah,
very arresting.
They were very exciting, and I don't live around Venus flytraps, so it's sort of cool to see them do their work. And that's how we are introduced to our Van Helsing character, who in this film is called Professor Bulwer.
Yeah.
I didn't really understand what we were doing with this character. His, I believe, only plot function is there so that Ellen can say to Hutter, get Bulwer, in order to get Hutter out of the house so that she can sacrifice herself. But I really felt like this character is in there because there's a smart scientist who solves the problems in Dracula, and so we also need it in this film. I don't think we actually needed him in this film, much though I enjoyed his scene where he's with his students.
I think that's kind of fair. Maybe part of it is that, because of pop culture, we are so familiar with vampires and vampirism and vampire lore. I think he's just there as an exposition device to tell us what vampires are like and what their deal is. That's my best explanation. Yeah, he doesn't really contribute anything to solving the mystery.
Yeah, he's really not like Van Helsing at all. And I don't know if there were scenes of him being more Van Helsing-y that they cut in order to make Mrs. Stoker happy.
I think also he's just supposed to add to the spooky, mysterious nature of the whole thing, because at the beginning they say, oh, he's a scientist, but he's also a Paracelsian, a Christian magician guy. So I think he's just there to add some magical tone. There's a really consistent visual metaphor of people framed against doorways and arches. I would say over a third of all shots in this movie are someone framed against a doorway and arch. And I think it's supposed to kind of represent that sense of choice, that people are constantly making choices. Do you enter the castle, or do you realize this is a bad idea? Do you not enter the castle? Is your family going to die at the end, or is it not going to die at the end? Is your door going to be marked with that cross? So it does seem like the metaphor of, at each stage you can choose to keep going deeper, or you can choose that actually this is a bad idea and you should pull out. I think that's the main message from the doorway framing. Do you think there's something else going on
I
there?
think there is also a surveillance element. One of the most famous and iconic archway shots is Orlok standing in the window staring into Ellen's window, and she looks at him. And they replicated this in the. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Not exactly.
It's fairly late in the film. Orlok has moved into his new house, and there's a very sort of plain shot of the brick wall and the blown out window that Orlok is standing in and just sort of staring. And
Oh, yeah.
Ellen sees him staring
Across
at her.
the street.
Yes.
Not blinking.
Not blinking. And then he sort of like creepily walks out at the end of the shot. That's a window, not a doorway, although it's a very tall window that lets us see most of Max.
Same device.
And I think that's like what can be perceived through a window, who is looking at us without us knowing. Because Ellen does feel sort of like oppressed by the surveillance once she realizes there's a creepy guy in there. Yeah, and a window is also what ultimately kills him. Good thing her bedroom had a window, otherwise it wouldn't have worked.
That's a great point. Yeah, but I do think there's something about, again, as a story about the life-draining experience of class, about how where you are situated physically in the world and in the architecture of human society is going to have a big influence on what options you have and what you can and cannot do. I knew you said before you were a big fan of the boat scenes in the Dracula novel. How did you feel like the boat scenes held up here?
There was one shot that I absolutely adored of the boat. The music helped. And the camera, we're starting at like, I don't know boat terminology very well. We're looking at like the prow, the
front pointy bit.
The front pointy bit, yeah. And we're fairly close in that, you know, in the context of being at sea. And the camera sort of rotates maybe 45, 60 degrees around the boat as the boat is turning, and we see it sort of approaching Visborg.
Is this the ghost boat at this point you're talking about?
Yeah, I can't remember how many of the mariners have died at this point, but yes.
Well into that process.
Yeah.
I really liked the sequence when they arrived at the dock. This is some of the most entertaining parts of it.
You really like the hats.
Oh, they had... There's that moment where all the different dock workers sort of gather around in a circle to discuss this empty ship that has arrived. And yes, I did refer to that as the Cool Hat Dock Worker Club. Because they have a great array of very cool hats. I'm not normally into 19th century hats, but those were all great. Those are all great hats. I especially want to call out the detective. Is he the ship inspector? There's one guy who sort of shows up and he's in charge and he starts telling everybody what to do and he's like, let me go look at this boat and figure out what's going on here. That guy had a great outfit. Definitely needs to be nominated for Best Contemporary Outfit at the 2025 Dovies.
Not contemporary.
Is this...
This is set in 1838.
Oh, it's set in 1838. You're right. Okay, Best Historical Outfit. He's got a great hat. He's got this really tall, pointed one. Much more pointed than your standard top hat, which I think is an underrated look. It's a very solid look. And he's got a really, really great black cape. He also has a look, which I don't normally love, which is pants that go all the way up to the chest.
So that is 1830s.
That's how they did
Men's pants were very high.
They were very high. The dock workers did not have pants that went up that high.
They're not doing fashion.
They're just not fancy enough, I see. Yeah, well, this guy was clearly... They worked really hard on this guy's outfit, and he did look really cool.
Regarding the high pants, long legs look, it did seem like Max Schreck's costume was being proportioned so as to give him these really long looking legs. I think his jacket was sort of cut shorter than it normally would have been. And I don't know if they were like padding out his shoulders to raise them, because he was mostly legs.
I do think the prosthetics in this film are very good for 1922.
Yeah, very impressive.
They look great. It looks kind of realistic. I mean, he's supposed to be a dead person, so he wouldn't look normal. Impressive. I haven't seen any other prosthetics from 1922 that are anywhere near that good. Well, if it's a historical costuming film, what's your historical costuming review? How did the Murnau team do?
Yeah, I like this. Ellen's sleeves could be a little bit bigger. Could it have been done better? Yes, but I think this is very good.
I think the best shot of the movie is the most famous shot of the movie, which is the one at the end where Nosferatu's hand reaches out and grabs Ellen's heart as she dies.
Before she dies.
First
he grabs it, then he drinks.
Yes. it's not surprising that has gone on to be the most famous shot of this movie because it is really well composed.
I really liked all the shadow shots of him snaking up the stairs, going in there. I mean, I don't know how they did it. I think that's very cool because the proportions aren't changing wildly. And I think this is such an iconic sequence of shots that they obviously tried to recreate it in the 2 remakes, and I think both of them did a bad job. We'll get there when we get there. I do want to talk about one of the sequences that we complained about, which is Jonathan leaving the castle.
Oh, yes.
We struggled with this.
It was not clear what was going on in that part.
Yeah, so Jonathan, and by that I do mean Hutter.
Yeah.
Has found these teeth marks on his neck like 2 nights in a row.
He thinks they're mosquitoes.
Orlok is very, very creepy. I think the first night he thinks they're mosquitoes, and the second night he's like,
I'm starting to think this guy's a vampire.
Something up. Is something up. So he's sort of exploring around the castle and finds this like crypt where Orlok lives, and he pushes, kind of dumb, but he goes and pushes...
Through the door. I choose to go deeper.
He pushes the lid off the coffin, sees Orlok inanimate, obviously dead, because it is daytime. And then apparently just is like, I'll spend another night in this castle. It doesn't make any sense why he doesn't immediately leave. And then later, when he does try to leave, they don't establish that the doors are locked. So it's like, why is he trying to make this sheet rope to climb out the window?
I feel like it's either a missing shot or just bad directing, in that we're supposed to somehow know in that first scene where he discovers Orlok that he's already locked in and he can't leave at that point. Mm-hmm. And once we know that, then it makes sense that he doesn't leave right away and that he tries to escape with the sheets. At least it makes more sense.
I still think he should try to leave right away.
Yeah, he could have made the sheet thing right away. Mm-hmm. So I agree that just seems like a fumble. I think there's supposed to be more content about him being imprisoned in the castle that we just don't see, but I can't explain it.
Okay.
I think that was the original vision, and it's... Maybe that wasn't the original reels. Again, we are reconstructing this movie third hand. So it really feels like there's something missing.
I would believe there's
That's what I believe.
A lost shot of him realizing he's locked in.
That's what I believe.
Yeah, because he does say when he sees Orlok putting his coffins on the cart and then driving away, he's like, oh, he's going to Visborg. I need to go stop him. I need to go warn the people. And that's why he escaped. So I guess he was just fine being in there another night if everything was going to be as it had been. And it's only when Orlok leaves that he's like, I need to go.
Yeah, perhaps in his naivete, he's like, well, he didn't kill me, so he'll probably just let me go in a few days or something. He'll be fine. Which kind of fits his character. I would kind of believe that. What did you think about the music in this film?
I loved it.
This
is totally my thing. High drama. I was hearing some like Tchaikovsky influences. I think you didn't like it.
I did not like the score. I thought it was too silly and really did not fit what was going on the screen. It made it way less scary. I was
I'm
like, we
not
put this
trying to be scared
for your scary movie.
I'm not trying to be scared.
It was not scary. It was definitely not scary.
Perfect.
It was kind of nice classical music. It's kind of nice, kind of one step away from elevator music.
That's unfair.
Okay. I mean, I did think it was kind of modernist in its instrumentation sometimes, so I thought it was a bit interesting, but I did not understand why it was the score for this movie. If I went to see this in 1922, I'd be like, this is the score you made?
Yeah, I'm also not 100% sure that we were listening to the original score.
Well,
there's
a complicated
definitely
question of film
history. There's definitely
I think it's
different music on different prints. I think I found the original, but I'm not positive.
Well, we don't have the full original score, so whatever you find is going to be a reconstruction. So I think this is an attempted reconstruction.
Yeah, and this was with a full orchestra, so I don't think this is what you would have been experiencing when you went to the movie theaters in 1922 anyway. It would have been a piano score.
It did seem like there were some good, like, sync up moments with the music in some of the final dramatic action sequences. So I thought those were nice. Might have been tough for our 1920s piano player to get that just right, though.
The actors are acting to a metronome.
Well, I mean, for the piano player that's playing live in the theater. But you're right. The actors clearly were synced up very precisely.
So that's it for the Murnau film, although I expect we will make frequent references to it throughout the rest of the podcast. this is the part of the podcast where we say, hey, we have a film in mind that we want to pair with something. What should we pair it with? And this one is really hard. Going off of the theme of interesting copyright situations, I want to know if anyone has a pairing for Sita Sings the Blues, film made by Nina Paley, largely by herself. David, we've both seen this film, and we both think it's very interesting. It didn't get a wide theatrical release, so you probably haven't seen it. But if you're into weird...
It's moderately well known.
Okay, yeah. For a indie film that never got a theatrical
That's not
release.
even a real film, per se.
Yeah. Some elements that you might be able to connect to other films are it has multiple art styles, multiple animation styles. It's an auteur project. Nina did almost all the work by herself. She decided to do this because a early 20th century singer whose music she liked, no one can hear her music because the company that owns the copyright to the music just isn't letting anyone listen to it. So she bought the rights, even though she has made her film available for free. She bought the rights so that people could hear this music, and so she could include it in her film. And it's also sort of half an adaptation of the Indian epic, the Ramayana, from Sita's point of view, from the woman's point of view, and half the story of Nina getting dumped by her husband. So we see Nina's divorce, and she's processing it by making this Sita Sings the Blues film, and that process is part of the film. So if you guys know of any films similar to that, my hopes are slim, but that would be really great. We'd love to talk about Sita Sings the Blues.
It doesn't have to be exactly the same as that, of course.
Yeah, I do not expect that it will be exactly the same as that, but give us something to bite into with the connection between the films. Okay, ready to talk about Werner Herzog?
Let's do it.
I am going to say his name really in a really obnoxiously German way the whole time.
Well, that's kind of you. People say it, like me, say it in a very obnoxiously English way a lot, so we can balance it all out.
So Nosferatu the Vampire, also premiered under the title Nosferatu Phantom der Nacht, Ghost of the Night or Phantom of the Night, is a 1979 film. It was directed by Werner Herzog and written by Werner Herzog, Tom Schachtman, and Marcia Groman. It stars Klaus Kinski as Count Dracula. We've gone back to the Dracula names. Isabel Adjani as Lucy Harker. That's not a name that ever appears in Dracula. There is a Mina, but she's a very minor character. Bruno Ganz as Jonathan Harker, or as Isabel Adjani says the whole film, Jonathan. Roland Topor as Renfield, and Walter Landegast as Dr. Abraham von Helsing.
So Werner has said that he believes the 1922 Nosferatu is the greatest of all German films. So he's a big fan. And this is actually Werner's first full English language feature film. Well, sort of, because it was simultaneously filmed in both English and German. Meaning that, well, a lot of it is ADR, but each scene was filmed twice, once with English dialogue and then again with German dialogue.
Okay, to me it seemed like it was kind of shot like spaghetti westerns, where often the stars are reading their lines in English and the secondary characters are reading their lines in Italian, and then you just voice over the wrong language depending on which country it's being released in. I do think it looked like some of the minor characters their mouths were not moving in an English way. Their mouths were speaking a German line and they were getting voiced over.
Yeah, I don't know.
But also the ADR was pretty bad.
Yeah, the ADR is not great, so it's kind of hard to tell. I think that's maybe somewhat intentional. It's all a bit blurry and everyone just has to play along. This is, of course, was a relatively popular technique in the 70s. There were quite a few films that were made in this simultaneous filming style. Like,
yeah, especially continental films.
The Message was made in both English and Arabic, etc. Of course, by this time, vampires very much were in pop culture. And this was actually released in the middle of a ton of vampire movies were being released around this time. It was filmed from May to June of 1978 on a $1.5 million budget, which is not big, even for 1978. And there was a total crew of 16 people who made this movie. So not a lot of budget, not a lot of hands to solve problems.
More than one camera?
Probably.
It's an upgrade.
It's an upgrade. Herzog filmed the opening sequence of the mummies himself, and they are real mummies. These are the mummies of Guanajuato in Mexico, who are victims of an 1830s plague. A cholera epidemic swept through this region of Mexico in 1833, and in this region of Mexico, you get naturally mummified. It's very hot and dry, so if you just leave people in a cave, that is what happens. So he had already seen the mummies in the 60s, then he returned, and in this case, to film the sequence, he took all of the corpses out of their glass cases, where they are normally stored, and then arranged them against the wall from youngest to oldest, and then just did a big sweeping shot across.
Yeah, I initially thought those can't be real mummies because they're too small. So you're telling me those are just children mummies?
Those are children mummies.
Great. Do you have thoughts on the ethics of that?
As we will discuss more briefly, and as you will learn if we watch other Werner Herzog movies, ethical filmmaking is not Werner Herzog's priority. Mm-hmm. Many of Werner Herzog's films are about a person who's so totally controlled by some idealistic dream that they don't even stop to think about if they're doing it the right way. They don't even care. And it appears that that is a thinking style that Werner himself often finds a natural inspiration for those characters. Originally, he had planned to film the rest of the sequence in Germany, but the German authorities were not too excited about the making of the movie, certainly not the part with all the rats. So then he had to move to the Netherlands. So this film was primarily filmed in the Netherlands, in the western part of the Netherlands. He also wanted to film the castle sequences on location in Romania. But the Romanian government was not going to let that happen. This was the Ceausescu regime, very dictatorial regime, and they in Romania, Vlad the Impaler is a hero of the Romanian nation. He had to put all those people on spikes because that was the only way to keep order, and that they're really into that idea. And so they weren't going to let anybody make a film about how he was actually bad. They don't like that. Now, there are some parts of the film that were made in Germany because this film features the same buildings to represent the abandoned home that the Count is moving into.
It did look very similar.
They are the same buildings. They are the Salzspeicher, the salt storehouses in Lübeck, Germany, which are actually still there today. They have been preserved as historical buildings. So if you
because of the film or because of
they were also famous for the economic management of salt in this town, and that was a major industry in the town, but I don't think the films hurt those efforts. And this was the fourth of 5, I could be getting that wrong, but the fourth of 5 of the major collaborations between Herzog and Kinski. Of course, they have a infamously painful and difficult relationship. Werner Herzog can be a very weird person to work with, and Klaus Kinski certainly can too. He was well known in all of his roles for being hard to control, extremely passionate, throwing tantrums, extremely particular about his art and his personal comforts, etc. A diva might be understating it. And, this was a hard film for him to do. He had to spend 4 hours every day getting into all the makeup and stuff. And he wanted to play the Dracula character as very energetic and as very lively. And as we can see, I think, from the final product, that is not what Werner wanted. Werner wanted him to be sort of this slow, moody, brooding character. And so he couldn't get Kinski to agree to do this. So what he would do is, he would just, before each sequence with Kinski, he would get him really, really upset, which is apparently a pretty easy thing to do with Klaus, not a big deal. And he would just throw this massive tantrum and work out all of his energy. So all of the shots that we're seeing of him in the film, he's truly exhausted and is just so tired from screaming all the time that is his most energetic performance he could put out.
Wild.
Herzog said that the rats in the film were better behaved than Klaus. Ha ha ha.
I believe he did not treat the rats very well.
Yeah, as a matter of fact,
animals were harmed in the making
of this movie. They were overcrowded. They were neutered in not very healthy or comfortable ways. And they were dying of starvation. They were eating each other. There's also, he really wanted the rats to be black when they came off of the ship because they were plague rats. But for some reason he purchased a whole bunch of white rats, and he decided that the solution to this was he was going to dye the rats, which involved boiling them in ink and a lot of them died in that process, and it didn't even work. They mostly just licked the ink off of themselves, which is why they look sort of gray, but mainly not very much. So that's what happened with the rats in this movie. The film was released in January of 1979. We don't know how much money it made. We also don't know how much money the original Nosferatu made.
We already got through Christmas, so it's okay. Christmas was not ruined.
The film received a good response initially, was distributed all around the world and received some very good critical reviews. It has a Rotten Tomatoes score of 94%, and I would say that there were no awards at the time, but it was received very positively. And I would say its reputation has really only grown since then among the film community. A lot of directors, a lot of critics really cite this as what they think is maybe the best vampire movie of all time. You know, it's really gotten a lot of artistic credit. It doesn't seem like audiences have really responded in the same way. It currently holds a 7.4 on IMDb on 48,000 votes. And that seems to be more the audience reception. That is fine. But it was considered a hit, certainly for its budget. And there was a film, a sequel film, in name only, Nosferatu in Venice, also starring Klaus Kinski, but it doesn't have anything to do with this movie, and Herzog was not involved.
Well, it is surprising to me that this has been so well received, because I think this is a serious contender for worst film I've ever seen.
Well, the initial reviews said that it was both scary and serious, and that it was sort of fun to have all the vampire parts, but then, like, you really felt sympathy for the Dracula character, and maybe, like, Dracula's not so bad after all, and he's just like a person too, and like all of us are feeling alienated because like the 60s are over, and like aren't we all just kind of sad and we're just giving up on trying because who cares?
Yeah, so that is one of the things that I didn't like. The Murnau Orlok is clearly just like evil and bad, and apparently Herzog saw this and was like, I want to make it so that we understand him. This is not original or innovative. This film came out after Interview with a Vampire, which is probably the most Anne Rice novel. So that's
not the film Interview with a Vampire.
No.
Okay, right.
The novel that it's based on.
Yes.
So yeah, Anne Rice had already made us think sympathetically about
trying
vampires.
to make it an Interview with a Vampire style film.
I think that I'm not an expert on vampire lore, but from what I can tell, the first media property to go, what if the vampires were sympathetic, is the late 60s, early 70s soap opera Dark Shadows with Barnabas Collins. I believe that is the first sympathetic look we get at vampires. Before then, they were all monsters. So, yeah, I didn't like that Nosferatu was sympathetic. I think it sort of confused what was going on. I also really didn't like that he talked. One of the things that's so compelling about the silent film is that Orlok never talks. And of course, nobody else talks either. But we never hear his voice, and that makes him seem less real. This guy seemed extremely imminent and normal. I had a hard time sympathizing for him when he's like, I just want to be with the people. I was like, dude, if you get a toupee, if you cut your fingernails, then you stop putting this eyeliner on. Now you're just a pale guy with some weird teeth, which for mid-19th century Germany is normal. You don't have to be living like this.
I mean, I think his relationships with animals are going to really start to suffer when he begins to eat them. That's really going to cut down on their...
He hangs out with people a lot without eating them.
I don't think that's true.
He has a whole conversation with Lucy where he's just sort of like, I'm sad.
Yeah, he can do it for like 10 minutes. After about 10 minutes, he's like, I gotta eat you. I'm very sorry, but I gotta eat you.
I didn't like it. I didn't like, we talked about those iconic shots in the Murnau film of the shadow going through the house and entering Ellen's room. This did replicate those shots, but then totally ruined it by just having Klaus step into the frame. In the original, it's like magical. His shadow is moving through the house and manipulating things. Like, he's not even there. He can get you from afar. In this one, it's like, yeah, there's a man there and he has a shadow. And we filmed the shadow instead of the man because we wanted to be like the other movie. I also thought the biggest problem for me was that Bruno Ganz totally unable to deliver a line. Listening to everything he said was really painful for me.
Yeah, I think both of the French actors in this production, Bruno and Isabelle, are struggling with the English.
Yeah.
Maybe their German was better. Maybe their German was actually pretty good, but their English isn't great, and it's very noticeable.
We did notice that Herzog seemed to be really strongly correcting one of the problems we had with the previous film, which is like, is Jonathan locked into this castle? He's like,
we established that.
Jonathan is locked in the castle. We have like 6 or 7 shots of him running through the castle, going to different doors.
And he tries all the doors. Could he go out the front door? No, that was locked. Could he go out the back door? No, that was also locked. And though maybe it's a little pedantic, I guess it is a better movie for it. I believe that he couldn't get out. I was also interested in that in this version, Dracula locks his bedroom door, which appears to be a good idea for a vampire. Jonathan still just breaks in. It's not that hard. But yeah, in the original 1922 version, that door's just open. So
it would be very rude to go into someone's basement.
Well, they did. He did, though. Apparently, that's not a very good protection. It seems like if you're a vampire, you should be trying harder. But I guess he just sort of knew that Hutter was the pussy and wasn't going to do anything about it anyway. I guess that's the interpretation we're supposed to get from this.
So I guess that is an improvement. But there were other instances where it seemed like Herzog was leaning on us having seen the Murnau film and just sort of skipped some bits that were meant to be assumed. I really don't like that we never see Ellen and Jonathan, mix up the names, Lucy and Jonathan, happy. Like, scene 1, she's already upset. She's having spooky premonitions that something's bad is going to happen to him today. I really wanted to see them happy to start with. We need to establish a baseline that then gets ruined. She also is holding cats, but she never has like any fun interactions with the cats. And they cut the flowers part where he gives her flowers and she says, "You killed the pretty flowers." So when we get to the point where she's reading about how to destroy the vampire and she's like, oh, it must be a pure woman who willingly sacrifices herself, I had no evidence that she was a pure woman. Like, I think we need the loves the kitties and is sad about the flowers in order to establish that. So I was like, wow, why are you doing this? Go find somebody else who actually loves their cats.
Well, she's pure in that, like, you know,
she's not a virgin. Although they do have twin beds, which was bewildering to me. They didn't have twin beds in the...
Why is this bewildering to you?
Are they not having sex?
Well, maybe they don't want kids. The whole twin bed thing is a complex factor of historical relationships that I have yet to fully process myself on.
I mean, this is 79, so I assume you were allowed to put it in film by then.
Sure.
Okay.
No, it's an intentional...
It's not
they're
49.
emphasizing that idea.
Yes. And those beds are extremely narrow.
No, there's really not room for two. I mean, they do get in together at one point.
Do they?
Yeah, in the first scene, Jonathan goes into her bed and holds her because she's sad.
I don't remember that.
Oh, yeah.
I believe you.
So much for the twin beds.
You're right.
Yes, didn't really work out that way.
Look, I mean, if you're stacking people on top of each other, it doesn't matter how wide the bed is.
That's one way to put it.
So overall, I think there was a lot of eyeliner going on in this film. I think we were supposed to
I think it's supposed to be natural that he just looks like that. He's not supposed to be applying eyeliner.
Not just on Klaus, also on Isabelle. I was like, I don't think this woman is pure. I think she's just goth.
Yeah, I was surprised in this version that Dracula is not his own coach driver. Again, that's sort of my favorite part of the book, is that sort of momentary insight into the life of Dracula, which is something of a sympathetic note. And I was so shocked that we didn't have the scene of Jonathan discovering Dracula setting the table alone and Dracula being kind of embarrassed about that. I thought that would have done... That's like the main way that the story sets up the narrative tone that Herzog is trying to implement here. So, yeah, I felt like that was really weird that he just cut that. It's like, no, he just hired a coach driver. He is a coach driver.
I believe that the novel Dracula was out of copyright at this point. So you could have imported scenes from there, which it seems like he kind of wanted to do given that he went back to the original names.
Yeah. So I was very surprised that did not factor in. I really liked the cinematography in their dinner scenes. I know you didn't like Nosferatu talking too much. I mean, he does say stuff in the 1922 version in the dinner scene, right?
The,
He is
the
like,
character has lines, but I, as a viewer, do
okay,
not
well,
hear his voice.
you don't hear anyone's voice in the 1922 version.
Right.
Okay. All right. So are you saying in the 1979 version he should have had no lines, unlike all the other characters?
So I think that...
Or he should have had title cards?
I think that Eggers did manage to make it work by... for the first, like, half hour that Orlok is on screen, you don't see his face. So there is a voice, but that voice could be coming from anywhere.
Okay.
I don't like him feeling so corporeal. Like, watching his lips move and sounds come out of them, and he's got a lot of lipstick on, so you can't miss it, really made him seem normal and not supernatural.
I mean, I do think that was the point.
I know, but you're killing the vibe. I don't think this was a technical error. I think this was an error in planning.
Yeah, sounds like he achieved his goal. You don't approve of that goal, which is fine. Yeah, well, I really liked the cinematography in that dinner scene. I love the floating head Nosferatu, where he's all in black, he's against a fully black, and so he has this stark white painted head, so it looks like there's just a floating head. And I thought it was very cool looking, very fun looking, and also did a lot to force you, perhaps in a bad way, to identify with this character as a person. You know, it's sort of almost like this abstract theater mind, abstract theater portrayal, where you're just sort of, you're talking to a floating head, and it forces you to appreciate it on a much more human level, but still also being kind of weird and creepy looking. So I thought that dinner head shot, especially the one over the table where all the beautiful food is laid out in front of him, and then the head's just sort of floating at the other end of the table, I thought it just looked great. I thought it was super arresting. I also liked the handheld camera that comes in when Jonathan is searching around in the castle, because, you know, Jonathan is sort of being the voyeur now. He's the one that's exploring parts that he's not allowed into, and we sort of get to feel that along too. We're sneaking around looking at things we aren't supposed to see. So I do think the camera work in here, like almost all of Herzog movies, is very effective and very intentional. So I mean, it sounds like maybe you didn't like that intention, but I think it succeeded in its goals.
I do think that there were several shots that were just way too bright. I'm thinking specifically about the shots once Jonathan has escaped and he's riding his horse back to, I think they call it Wismar.
Wismar, that's right. Thank you.
In this version. It was so bright. The grass is neon green, and I'm like, guys.
Well, they're trying to contrast it with the dark shadow environment of the castle.
Right, but Jonathan, we have not arrived in safety. Jonathan is really concerned.
Yeah.
Also, David, what's up with that child playing the violin?
Well, I think the film implies on several occasions that Dracula has the power of mind magic, and that everything that Jonathan is experiencing in the castle is not real. That's why immediately after Jonathan leaves the castle, we turn around and see that it's actually just ruins, and there is no castle there. And like we said before, Dracula prepares this sumptuous banquet, but where would he get food? They don't even have grapes like that here. Like, this is not possible. So that's not a real food. He's just mind magicking that into Jonathan's mind. And the boy is the representation of all the ghosts of the castle that have fallen victim. Of course, in the original Dracula, which I guess they don't put in the movies because it'd be too unpleasant, Dracula loves killing and eating children. That's like his main thing. And so
Eggers did it.
That is the phantom of the children that Dracula has eaten.
Okay, and Dracula could, like, the child who that originally was not play the violin very well at all.
Well, he was
Is Dracula
learning.
Controlling the music, and Dracula doesn't know how to play the violin?
Maybe Dracula lured him to the castle by promising him violin lessons.
Yeah, I just feel like one can imagine a reason for why a 9-year-old child doesn't play the violin very well.
Most of them don't, to be fair.
I've been a 9-year-old child and they gave me a violin and I didn't do a great job. What I mainly learned how to do was rest the bow on the strings in such a way that you weren't pressing down hard enough to make vibrations. So
Step one, teach them how to be quiet with the violin.
Yeah.
That's step one.
A lot of me playing the violin was me just moving my bow silently across the strings. And whenever I was personally tested, then I didn't have private violin lessons. This was in school. Whenever I was personally tested, then I would try to make it happen. But I was like, I am not fucking up this concert.
Smart choice. So yeah, I find that pretty believable. But
And
yeah,
anyway, I can think of reasons for why a child would play this violin badly, but they're also it's totally unnecessary. And now you're making me listen to this terrible noise. Why could the film is not worse if the violin playing is better? It's not like the film makes
but
more
it's more
sense.
creepy that way.
It's not creepy. It's just bad.
I think he
I
thought
don't-
it was creepy.
Okay.
That's what the answer to that question is. I'm not saying he's right. I don't think I love. I think I hate Dracula's line during that banquet sequence where he says, "Time is endless, as profound as 1,000 nights." I feel like this is very poor rhetorical structure, because if time is endless, and the way it's profound is 1,000 nights, a distinctly unendless amount of time.
Not even that long.
Not particularly long. I mean,
3 years.
3 years or so. That's a while.
You've been alive for 200.
So I didn't think that was the line. Maybe 1,000,000,000 nights, but yeah, if it's endless and then you're trying to find a way to describe that, don't conclude by giving a limited amount of time. That's probably not the right way to do it.
Maybe it worked better in German.
Maybe it worked better in German. I hope so. In this film, the core framing device is not doorways and arches. It's travel. It's modes of travel. It's maps. It's discussing at what point person is going to go from physical geographic location A. There are a lot of different modes of travel. We see horses. We see ships. We see rafts with the raft of all the coffins going down the river. Werner Herzog loves a good death raft movie. So this is just yet another case of people taking a raft to their unavoidable death. No dock worker hats in this one. All the dock workers were hatless, and I was sad. This film seems to emphasize even more the idea that Van Helsing is totally useless. I mean, that's like the explicit plot. When the plague rat ship shows up, Van Helsing is like, yep, that's a normal plague ship. We can just use normal medical stuff to deal with this problem. Should be fine. And then at the end, Jonathan frames Van Helsing for Dracula's death, kind of maybe to save Lucy's reputation, but she's already dead. Really, it's because he's a vampire now, and he's worried that Van Helsing is going to figure that out and turn against him, so he immediately has him dispatched so he can begin his evil plans.
Yes.
So yeah.
Thank you for reminding me. I'd erase this from my brain because I hate it so much. So Lucy's sacrifice is ultimately pointless because there's just another vampire.
That is the point. Yes. It didn't actually work.
Well, that's a bummer.
Yes. Werner Herzog movies are normally bummers.
Why are you doing this to me, Werner?
That's a good question.
Have you ever considered that sometimes a good thing happens?
Werner Herzog has not ever considered that.
Okay.
No, he has not. No, he does not agree with that. Okay. He strongly opposes that idea. I do think it's weird.
Yeah, so now it's like, okay, this dumb lady just died for no reason.
Yeah, I mean, I think...
What? Like, she knows that Jonathan is turning into a vampire. That's why
I don't think she knows
She
that.
absolutely does. That's why she says the host it cannot get past the host. That's why she crumples a sacramental wafer and boxes him in. He can't leave.
Well, I think she
corner.
thinks that that's not an irreversible process. She seems to believe that if she sacrifices himself, that it will save her husband, as it did she probably saw the 1922 version, and she was like, that's how it worked then. That seems to be her impression. Yes. This seems to be her impression that it'll work. It just doesn't work.
Okay.
I mean, it does work to kill Nosferatu, but who's Nosferatu now? Yeah, I mean, I think here is where, though, I mean, it has to be said that the final sequence where Dracula gets there is played up in a very sexy way. He pulls up her dress, and we see her legs, etc. And she's moaning, and it's clear that she's kind of into this whole thing. And Johnny herself made very clear in interviews outside the film that it was a sex thing, and it's intended that she's supposed to be having a sexual reaction. Yeah,
I was kind of wondering if this was if this scene was meant to be interpreted a la the BoJack Horseman Scientology episode. For people who haven't seen this episode of BoJack Horseman, one of our characters, Todd, I can't remember why, but he's like, I need a hobby. He's walking down the streets of LA, sees a sign for the Church of Scientology, and is like, maybe I could join that. But then sort of casually decides no and walks down to the next building, which is an improv acting
class
troupe.
Club.
Yeah, an improv club. And as it turns out, the improv club is very similar to Scientology, and it is used to critique Scientology because they're very litigious. And so he's like, it's not Scientology, it's an improv class. And he just, but to the audience, he's saying, understand this in the light of Scientology. So I was like, when I saw Nosferatu pulling up the nightgown, I was like, am I supposed to be interpreting this as what's actually happening is they're having sex? But Verna's like, I'm not allowed to show that, so we'll just do neck biting. But a sexy type thing happened at the beginning, so that's what I want you to actually be understanding this as.
Yes, I do think it is that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that, well, like I said before, I think we would see the initial, the 1922 version, which doesn't explicitly say anything sexual, but I think we can kind of put the dots there.
I mean, vampires are inherently kind of sexual, what with the penetration.
Fair. And I think, the idea from the 1922, and the classical vampire myth is that, like, vampires represent feudal absolutism, and this is something that feudal lords do, where they force people to... Prima nocta, etc. And the idea being that, like, it is, in fact, a noble thing for this woman to maybe willingly go to this evil count because she's saving her family and her village from punishment and trying to explore the complicated moral side of it there. In this version, it doesn't, like, I think we've moved on and we're no longer afraid of feudal absolutism. And now the good/bad thing is, in fact, female sexual desire. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, on one hand, it's kind of scary that your wife might have the hots for some other guy. But on the other hand, it's kind of a good thing because now she can express herself and it could even, I guess, kind of come in handy. So the fear there is more the fear of sexual impropriety. I think vampirism is a stand-in for syphilis in this version. Because in the castle sequence, there's the scene where Dracula makes his moves on Jonathan. And this sequence also has a clearly
much more romantic,
sexual underlaying. And it's kind of, I think it's basically implied that, like, in the realist interpretation, there was a homosexual encounter between Dracula and Jonathan. And then Jonathan is like, oh, I'm not sure I'm comfortable with this. So then Jonathan runs back. And in a way, Jonathan is spreading, Dracula is infected with some sexually transmitted disease. And Jonathan and Dracula are spreading this disease to Lucy and others.
Can you get syphilis from rats?
No.
Okay.
So, yeah, the rats don't fit into that interpretation, admittedly. But it is interesting because the plague, though it is a really big plot point in the story, it really doesn't seem to fit in the same way that it does in the 1922 or the 2024 version with Dracula's power and how he's manifesting it. It's more just like a side effect, a bad thing that happens because he happens to be here.
Yeah, it seems like in the 20s ones, Dracula Orlok's goal is to spread pestilence and disease. Like, that's what he's here to do.
Yeah.
In this one, he's come to Vismar because he wants a friend.
Well, he wants more than a friend, seems like.
I was.
Oh, you're being polite.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, he's here for company.
Contact.
Yes, he's here for human contact. And he got some human contact with Jonathan.
And it's so sad that he just, unfortunately, has these rats around him.
I do think it's interesting, just thinking at the very end of the movie, I don't think it really makes sense that Jonathan is he's now a vampire, but he's just standing in the daylight, which is totally fine. I kind of like the idea of I like the twist where he's the vampire at the end. I do see how that really undercuts Lucy's sacrifice and messes up the whole story. Frankly, I just don't think Werner Herzog is very interested in that part of the story other than, yep, women have sexual desires. They might have desire for someone other than you, and that's scary.
Why did you make this movie then? It's insane. It sounds like he wanted to adapt Interview with a Vampire.
I think you're right. I think he did want to adapt Interview with a Vampire. I do think you're right.
So in that way, it's kind of similar to the first one in that he wanted to adapt a book, but he wasn't allowed to because copyright.
I think that's what's happening here. And so the timing of it, even though I like the bit where when Orlok, or Dracula, dies, he immediately becomes, Jonathan takes over as the new vampire. Okay, that's cool. But then the whole point is that he has died at that point because he cannot be out in the sun at that
Right.
time. So then Jonathan immediately takes over. He's out in the sun and he's just fine. Maybe he's so fresh on blood that he can survive it, but it doesn't
Well,
really
this
check out.
is actually typical of diseases. As diseases move from person to person, they tend to become less severe because, as I'm gonna yell at Robert Eggers about, the goal of a disease, the goal of a parasite is not to kill its host. The fact that diseases kill humans is a terrible mistake on the disease's part, because they're meant to live in like a pig or a cow or a rat or a bat. The interactions with the human body are way more severe than is intended, and the disease is actually like, I'm so sorry, I didn't want you to die, I just wanted to sit in here and sort of live off your life force.
So we have a little bit.
Yeah, can we
Let's have
can we
a
be
little
chill
bit.
about this?
Yeah.
Also, another thing is that most of the things that we associate with disease, not all, but a lot of the symptoms of a disease, like fever, vomiting, cough, runny nose, these are not,
Immune responses.
yeah, these are not caused by the disease. That's your body doing it to itself, saying like, look, it's not good to vomit up everything you eat, but having a cholera bacteria inside you is worse, so we're going to do this bad thing in hopes of getting rid of the disease.
Yeah, that Eggers line is pretty crazy. Yeah, I mean, I think you're underselling. I mean, in a way, a disease is its real goal is to become a healthy and maybe even constructive part of your bioorganism. Ideally,
And there are plenty of bacteria in the
that's
human
right,
body that we have a good
love and
we need.
That's what they want. They want, like Dracula, what they really want is to be wanted. They want to be loved, and it's hard to find a way to configure that relationship where both sides get what they need. But ideally, they would become something that your body likes having around, that fills a utility in your life, and then the body starts protecting it and growing it and making sure it's always there. That would be ideal. So yeah, it does not want to kill you. You're totally right. So yeah, okay, maybe if so, that's good. So Jonathan is a super vampire. He's got all the vampire stuff, but he's not allergic to light. So yeah, now you can't be killed. Can't be killed. He's fine. All right. Well, good for Jonathan.
I hated it. So before we move on to the Eggers film, this was actually a secret quadruple feature because as we were watching the Herzog film, I needed a break, and so we watched Nosferatu Voguing, the classic YouTube video. David, your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, voguing is one of my favorite styles of dance.
Really? Okay.
I love voguing.
Why do you like it so much?
I think
It's very clear what you're supposed to do.
It's very clear what you're supposed to do. I like that. I think
Rhythmic.
It's very rhythmic. I like rhythmic content, and I think it was I like its sort of structured, geometric, almost intellectual, shall we say, interpretation of dance. I like that it's not super athletically challenging. I mean, that's great when people show off their athletic skills, but I like that there's what I think is a great dance that isn't really about that. I kind of like its cultural role as like almost an anti-dance that's evolving, and someone trying to do or maybe a post-dance, an ironic dance, self-aware dance. I just think it looks great. I love it. I'm a huge voguing fan. So, that's great. I'm always happy to see some quality voguing, and I think he did a good job. Clearly, this is not the first time he vogued. He did. It's not. You're not going to trick me by thinking like, oh, I did this for the show. You just vogue. You've been voguing and doing voguing stuff, and you've adapted that for the Nosferatu, which is great. It helped it. I think he did a pretty good acting job of delivering the character. I mean, he's not giving himself that much of an opportunity, but it's pretty good.
He didn't talk. I like that.
He didn't talk. That's true. Clearly, he looks more like the 1979 Nosferatu. I think visually he is Klaus Kinski. That is his intention. And he's wearing
Did he have lipstick? I think his lips were white.
I don't know. And he has the big flowing black robe, which is not what Orlok wears. That is what Klaus wears. So I think visually he's referencing the 1979 version, but it does appear that character-wise he is much closer to the Orlok version. And I don't think we're supposed to see him as somebody that is reaching out for human contact, as you said. And obviously it's a joke about how one thing we didn't mention, which is that in the 1922 version, Orlok is constantly doing weird things with his hands and arms. He has one which is kind of what I would call the flower pose, where he puts his arms straight down at his sides and then spreads his hands out wide as the petals of the flower, perhaps. I'm not sure what that is. Or it's that, or like a kid who's wearing a sweater that they're not fully comfortable with,
Yeah.
and is just sort of trying to
I
stand
think it's
perfectly
meant
still.
to be sort of like partial rigor mortis.
I think that's what it's going for. Yes.
Like his arms are frozen and he can only move his hands, so he's just flexing his hands really hard.
Sometimes he does one where he holds them in front of him with the hands going inside. Sometimes he does like a cat claw attack. So he does. I get the joke. I thought that was fair enough. Fair enough. So yeah, I give it a B. You seem like you're a bigger fan. Is that what energy I'm picking up on?
I think B is appropriate.
Okay.
What I really like is that he stays in character the whole time, even when he's going to turn off the music and turn off the camera. The best part of the video for me, which is a whole 44 seconds long, is like the last 2 seconds where he's in there turning off the music and reaching for the camera, and he's going.
The question is, did he know that he was going to have to turn the camera off, and the final part where he's trying to turn the camera off is truly part of the planned performance? Or is this truly him being surprised and being like, oh wait, I forgot I have to turn the camera off. How am I going to do this last part? Yeah. That's the real question.
I mean, the turning the camera off moment is pretty typical of early YouTube videos. All right. YouTube videos end with the speaker reaching lovingly for your face.
That's right. That's right. That was kind of part of the aesthetic.
Okay, ready for Eggers?
Sure. Okay.
This is a 2024 film. You might recall it. This one is just called Nosferatu. No subtitles. We're going simple. We're going clean. It was written and directed by Robert Eggers, and he credits as inspiration both Henrik Gallén's screenplay of the 22 film and Bram Stoker's novel Dracula as writing inspirations. No mention of anything from 1979.
Sorry, Werner.
I didn't see it. I don't care. It stars Lily Rose Depp as Ellen Hutter, Nicholas Hoult as Thomas Hutter, Bill Skarsgård as Count Orlok, Aaron Taylor Johnson as Friedrich Harding, Emma Corrin as Emma Harding, Simon McBurney as Knock, Willem Dafoe as Professor Alban Eberhard von Franz, and Rafe Ineson as Dr. William Sievers.
The name Alban there is not a coincidence. That is named for Alban Grau, the original producer of the 1922 version. So, Robert Eggers credits SpongeBob SquarePants as the original inspiration for this film.
That is not what I expected. But I love it.
In season 2 of SpongeBob, there is a bit. It's a pretty well known. I don't know how much SpongeBob you've seen, but it's a pretty well known bit.
A lot of SpongeBob. I am exactly the right age demographic.
Okay, well, there's one where SpongeBob and SpongeBob and Squidward are sitting around in the restaurant telling scary stories. Mm-hmm. And then at one point they tell a story that's not really very scary, but then they both get really scared about it. And then the lights start flickering on and off. And they're like, who's flickering the lights? And the camera cuts, and they cut to the 1922 silent Nosferatu. And it's...
Because it was out of copyright.
Because it was out of copyright. And with a animated light switch inserted on top of the camera. And in one of the scenes where Orlok is doing one of his weird hand things with his hands up, they've tricked it where he's now flipping this light switch up and down. And then SpongeBob and Krusty are like, well, that's actually not so scary. Yeah, Squidward, thank you. Like, that's actually not so scary. Kind of the point being that, like, you don't be too afraid of things. What's the worst it could be? I don't know, Count Orlok or something? It's not that. Whatever. It's a silent movie. Immediately after this came out, it really did a lot for popularizing Nosferatu. That was for many, many people the first time they had any contact with that. And like, what is that weird thing? And that's SpongeBob. And that's where Robert Eggers first became excited about the Nosferatu legend. And he's always been a big fan of it. He produced a play in high school about Nosferatu. He adapted Nosferatu for the stage in high school, and it was very well received. And they were invited to do one of those high school Broadway performances in downtown New York City. So he did Nosferatu on Broadway in high school. This was a troubled production, in and out of production for a long time, and they thought they were going to make it, and they didn't make it.
COVID probably didn't help.
One of the main things was COVID. So, yes, this is the plague theme. We're not in the Spanish flu times anymore, but we are in version 2, and that definitely had an influence on the production of this movie for some of the same practical and thematic reasons that had an influence in 1922.
Yeah, young directors, you guys need to start calling dibs on who gets to make the next Nosferatu remake after the next big plague.
That's a good one. Bill Skarsgård wants everybody to know that he did a lot of prep for Orlok, and he lost a lot of weight, perhaps an unhealthy amount of weight, to try to play different parts of the role. And he did a lot of work to train his voice, to try to make it go a full octave deeper, and incorporate Icelandic opera singing and Mongolian throat singing into the style. I gotta say that I hate the Dracula, the Orlok vocalizations in this movie. I hate the constant heavy breathing, and I get that it's like supposed to be that he's dead, and so I guess he doesn't breathe unless he needs to talk. So then when he talks, he needs to gather all the air in his lungs. But it just sounds terrible and annoying, and it's just constant grating on my ears that I don't want to hear.
I agree that I didn't want to hear it. So I think Eggers actually solved the problem of making this a sound film. So I talked about how I really liked I liked the original film because Orlok doesn't talk and this makes him seem surreal, and I didn't like the Herzog film because Orlok talks and now he's just a normal dude. I don't care. I think Eggers was like, so this guy is gonna talk, and the point is that you don't like it. Every time he talks, especially once you can see his face and it's creepy and gross, I'm like, yeah, what do I have to do to make this stop, Robert? I want it to go away. This is extremely unpleasant, which I think is the feeling I am supposed to be feeling. So I think the goal is a success, but maybe you don't agree with the goal.
Maybe so, maybe so. I don't think the goal is to bore me, and I was bored for all of those breathing parts. But I can appreciate where you're coming from.
Yeah, I do think that there were a lot of instances where things needed to be tightened up, so I wasn't specifically triggered by the Orlok breathing too much.
Yeah, the 1979 version is sometimes called languid, slow, or whatever, but I felt like this one had more pacing issues. The 1979 version does a pretty good job of not retracing its steps and moving forward, and this film does a lot of retracing. It's funny, though, because Bill Skarsgård did all this training to make his voice deeper, but then when Bill and Willem Dafoe and Ralph Ineson got together to do the line readings, as soon as they started Ralph Ineson did his first lines, they all burst out laughing because Ralph Ineson's voice was still so much deeper than Bill Skarsgård's voice. Just his normal talking voice. He does have, as you know from the film,
he played the Green Knight,
so he has a very deep voice. So Skarsgård did all this work, still not approaching Ralph. Ralph was just down there naturally.
Do you think they should have cast Rafe as Orlok?
Well, originally Skarsgård was cast as Hutter, as Thomas, and then originally Anya Taylor-Joy was going to be Ellen? Is she Ellen in this one?
Yeah.
Thank you.
We're back to the original name.
Anya Taylor-Joy was going to be Ellen, and Skarsgård was going to be Hutter, and then Anya Taylor-Joy, scheduling issues, everything got shuffled around.
She's too famous now.
And apparently Eggers just felt really bad that he already decided to once he decided to put Nicholas Hoult in, he was like, do you want to be Orlok? And, well, of course, Skarsgård had just gotten finished doing It in the Stephen King movies, so he's now an expert in super high prosthetic,
having
weird,
makeup put on
crazy
him.
guy. So then he said, well, why don't you do that instead? But
his primary profession is getting makeup put on him. His secondary profession is acting.
So I think the answer to your question is yes. And Egger said that he wanted Skarsgård to do it because he wanted someone who's pretty to do it. And he felt like the audience would get the point that he's supposed to be hot more if the real audience knew that the real actor underneath all the prosthetics was hot.
I didn't know that he was supposed to be hot. I didn't pick up on that one.
That's what Eggers said. I think he's supposed to be a cute guy. Anyway, wait, do you mean Mr. Skarsgård or do you mean Mr. Orlok?
I mean Mr. Orlok.
Well, Ellen seems to have.
She is unwell.
Well, I think the film is heavily influenced by the idea that maybe being the brutal, domineering alpha guy isn't nice, but it is sexy, and that's just what ladies want. And so, that's why people love vampires. That's definitely, I think, what the film is going for.
Okay, we'll talk about that more.
Okay, I know we're going to get into that a lot more. There's a lot of CGI in the film. This is not all practical effects. Sorry, Livy. Although the snow in the movie is not CGI. It is semi-real snow that is actually frozen potato flakes, where you just chop up a bunch of potatoes. They used to do it with like candles and the special snow candles, but it turns out that emits a bunch of toxic gases that poisons everybody. Annoying. So now we use frozen potato snow. And there were a lot of real animals used in the production of this movie.
He was much nicer to the animals.
There were a lot of consultants on set. Apparently, that process was all very carefully managed, including using real wolves in the scene where they're chasing the carriage, and in the scene where they chase Nicholas Hoult out the window. Mm-hmm. Those are real wolves, and Nicholas Hoult was really scared by these wolves. And apparently, he said the way it worked was like he would just be in the bedroom, and then they'd be like, "All right, 15 seconds from now, we're going to release the wolves, so try to get out of the bedroom by then." And they said he thought in his best performance, they released the wolves, and he did everything he could to jump out of the window. And then Robert Eggert said, "Okay, we're going to have to do that again." And he said, "No, that was my best one. Why would we have to do that one again?" He said, "Well, let's go look at it." And apparently, as he was jumping out of the window, he made a really weird face about how scared he was, kind of a face. And Eggert's like, "That's too silly." And he's like, "Okay, I do see how it's too silly. We can do it again." But I was not acting at that point.
That's a
I was just scared of wolves.
There are so many shots of Nicholas being scared in this movie. I think we should have left it.
Yeah, apparently most of those shots are Nicholas genuinely being scared of the various animals he had to work with. In a way, we can see a return to the color tinting process because all of the nighttime scenes were again shot during the day because you have to be able to see everything. It's all at night, basically. And then
cameras aren't as good as human eyes.
They would CGI the night onto it, which gives it that impossibly moonlit look.
Yeah.
When this film's trailer was released, it made one of the biggest splashes of any film trailer in history. Not so much with audiences, like a lot of people saw the trailer, it got good reviews, but film critics and people in the film industry, they thought this trailer was amazing, and a lot of people immediately said, this is going to win the Best Picture. Mm-hmm. This is going to be the new movie that unites the blockbuster and the art house, and this will be the film. This is the new Nosferatu. Huge splash. Originally, the film was scheduled to be released in October, as in the scary movie season. But then they chose to move it to Christmas, because they decided...
You have to ruin Christmas.
That's right. They decided that this was not going to be a very popular movie. This was not a blockbuster movie. This is an artsy movie. So they moved it to Christmas, which we're kind of supposed to do that for your Oscar releases because it's near the Oscar awards. And also because not that many people go see movies at Christmas. So you put kind of low performing movies that fans will go see no matter what at that time period. So, yeah. Now, when the film came out, it actually did very well at the box office. It made $181 million, which is not honestly that great. It's a 264% return on investment on their $15 million budget, but good numbers. And the critical reception was positive. It got mostly good reviews. There's an 84% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. But the critical reception was not as amazing as the initial trailer reaction, and people thought it had some pacing issues and maybe wasn't as innovative as they had hoped.
The thing that I've heard that people liked about the trailer is that unlike a lot of other horror trailers that have come out in the last 20 years, you don't see the monster at all. And everyone's like, oh, now I have to see the movie so I know what this monster looks like. And
of course, that's a tone that's enforced throughout the movie. And the movie is constantly teasing you with Orlok, and you see a little bit more and more. You see Orlok's penis before you see his face. And you sort of work your way.
That must have been another instance where I wasn't.
That was in the crypt when Nicholas wakes him up, or Jonathan Thomas, whatever the character's name is, wakes him up in the basement.
Okay.
And tries to pick him.
I think I looked away because I do not remember seeing penis.
I think you did.
I was like, this is about to be nasty.
Yeah, it was about to be nasty. And so we're only gradually revealed it. Again, personally,
you do then see his face very clearly.
Not in that scene.
I think
even in that scene, you see like 20% of his face, and it's mostly shadow.
I thought you saw a close-up of his face and his eyes open. And that's the reveal.
I can't remember exactly. The film is constant. More and more, it's teasing you with it. I did not actually like this very much. I mean, I guess it's cool if you're into like monster stuff, and they don't let you see the monster. I feel like part of the reason they're doing it is that their CGI and prosthetics are not actually that great, and it doesn't really look that spectacular once you get to see him. The final bit where we see that he has like no legs, and below the waist he is largely withered away.
Well, I think we only see his legs after he's died.
That's true. We're not sure.
So I don't think that's what he was normally looking
You're right. His legs are withering away. So that part is kind of cool. We get some monster stuff at the end. This definitely goes out of its way, at least at the end, to check off the scary monster fans. You get to see a scary monster. But yeah, I was mainly like, let me see what he looks like. I have trouble identifying with this character or what. Everyone else, it would make more sense if the characters in the movie didn't know what he looked like, but they seem to be able to know what he looks like.
I don't think Nicholas knows. I don't think Thomas
Right.
knows what he looks like.
Well, again, I just felt bored by this. I was not teased. I felt bored by that. But anyway, it is effective in the goal it's trying to see. If you do want to know what he looks like, what does he look like? I wanted to know. So yeah, did not win the Oscar for Best Picture. It did not. It was nominated. I think in 4 categories, it is very deserving of cinematography, makeup and hair, production design, and costume design. And I could have seen it maybe winning for cinematography. Obviously, that's, I think, what really stands out is the way the camera and the way that color is used throughout the film. Our cat has arrived to protect us from the vampire rats.
So you might get some meowing.
She's looking around to make sure that they're not going to get us, so thank you. Yes, thank you, Nova. Yeah. At the BAFTAs, it was nominated for all the same things, as well as being nominated for original score. Did not win. What do you think of the score of this movie? Because you're a fan of the original.
This one didn't really make an impression on me. I remember really liking the first one and really hating the second one. This one's in the middle.
Yeah, it seemed like a very generic horror movie score in a way. And the audience reaction, though positive again, was not overwhelming. It's got a 7.2 on IMDb, so this is the lowest IMDb score for any of these 3 films, on 238,000 votes. So a lot of people did see it. It was definitely very buzzy, very talked about online.
Yeah, I was disappointed in this movie. It was not as good as it had been built up to be. And I had, even post initial buzz, I am on r/period dramas. So I've seen a lot of like stills collections and people saying great things about this movie, mainly from people who are into like period dramas. And this does have lots of nice costumes, which is what we're mainly here for.
Did they succeed in historical accuracy? Are you satisfied?
They did not succeed in historical accuracy. I think most of what Lily Rose is wearing is very good. Not quite her last dress, which is like a wedding dress, but the one before, which is brown with gold stripes and like a V shape. There's one, from the front it looks nice. There's one shot of her back that I think the shot is too long, but that's what I think of a lot of the shots, where you can really see that the stripes don't match up. So that's a little cheap. And at one, Emma Corrin's first dress is this weird sort of cold shoulder situation with like cutouts on her shoulders, which is insane. But I think for the most part, they did a good job of capturing late 1830s costumes, which are kind of weird. David, before we can go any further, I just need to start out one question.
Okay.
According to this movie, is sex good or bad?
So I believe in this film, the Orlok is a metaphor effectively for like porn addiction. And I think that, again, it is an attempt to reflect the sort of fear of sexuality that many young people express now and feel disconnected because millennials have a very open view of sexuality when they view it as something that's very threatening. And obviously there are
Gen Z is afraid of sex.
Afraid of sex. And of course that's also a somewhat unfair stereotype,
Yes.
but I think that's what we're talking about here. I think that's the theme of the film. And I think that, I know these are not the most comfortable topics to discuss, but I do think that that is what the film is trying to discuss, along with broader issues of social isolation and the challenges of long-distance relationships, which are things that everyone can understand about. And so I think that the film does begin by saying that sex is bad. And it's like, people always act like sex is a good thing, but actually sex might be bad. And you might be exposed to sexual things at a young age, and that could cause you to have negative feelings later on in your life. So I do think that is the core message. But then at the end of the film, it does take this second stance on the subject, which is like, well, on the other hand, being exposed to sexuality makes you more mature. And now, like, you're not afraid of sexual things, and you know what you really want. And even if it's kind of bad, in a way, you need to know what you really want, and you need to have your needs satisfied. You know, your husband doesn't get it. You know, he can't appreciate your inner sexuality because it doesn't fit in his sexual narrative.
Because you're too weird.
And so, like, you're just going to have to live that on your own and deal with it personally, but don't count on anyone else getting it because you're weird. You're into dark stuff. And also, like, that's kind of cool. Does that answer your question?
You're so goth.
You're so goth. Yes.
Yeah, so here's what I was sort of struggling with throughout the film. It seems like Ellen has these strong sexual desires that she is constantly shamed for expressing. by her father in the story about her youth, and by Dr. Sievers. And this is something that, like, I, as a pro-sex millennial, am sympathetic to. Is like, ah, yes, a story about a woman being sexually oppressed. I know what to do with this. I do think, if we're looking at post-Napoleonic Europe, late 1830s Germany is actually one of the most sexually liberated options that you could have picked.
And especially in the post-Napoleonic sphere, Napoleon's something of a leftist leader and encouraged a relatively open view of female sexuality. So it's a good point.
A big factor of what's going on throughout the 19th century is the middle class, which now has enough money and purchasing power to dictate culture, saying, look, we may not have the social status of the aristocracy, but we have the moral status. So we are better than them. We're not like Prinny at Brighton. So I was like, okay, I know this story. I know what we're doing here. Story of the sexually repressed Victorian woman. Got it. But the sort of symbol of sexuality, Orlok, in this film is unambiguously evil. And so I was like, what are we doing?
This is a Gen Z sexuality film. I think that's the answer to this question. And I could see you and I feel like, well, wait, whose side are you on? And that they're on that side. That's the answer.
Okay, so this is not a didactic film. This is an expressive film.
Yes.
You think? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, because I was totally ready. I mean, I guess I wasn't totally ready. I was like, how are we going to turn this story around so that Ellen's sexual liberation and expression is a good thing when the person she's going to have sex with literally ripped the throats out of two little girls? So what do you think of the Hardings' sexuality, where they're sort of our foils, maybe, but it seems like they're in a pretty similar situation to the Hutters. So the Hardings keep having sex. The husband can't keep his hands off his wife. They have so many children, 2, and she's pregnant again. And I think we kind of underexplore Anna's reaction to this. I wasn't totally sure if she was into this or not.
I think there is some ambiguity there, which is, I think, meant to sort of shock and titillate the audience so they don't know if she's into it. I think the film fundamentally does say that she is mostly into it. I think that's clear.
She pretty clearly says, I don't want to have sex with you in public on the beach.
Right.
But
she doesn't seem to feel like her husband is sexually overbearing. That doesn't seem to be her complaint.
Yes. But their storyline does end in necrophilia. So I think we are meant to understand that there's something wrong with Friedrich's sexual impulses.
I don't think that that's true.
Or has he just been corrupted by Orlok's
I don't even think he's been... I think he's been corrupted, and I think the film is presenting a pretty positive interpretation of necrophilia. That it's like, well, he loves her so much. I think it's intended to be like, maybe you have a necrophilia kink. Well, this film is going to service that and not make you feel bad for that, because this is a film that's kind of about... It's a film that's about embracing casual sexuality bad, but
but true love,
embracing really dark sexuality, that's not so bad. I mean, that's kind of understandable. But on the other hand, I think the purpose of the Hardings is to show a good path. The good path for sexuality is you are married to one person and you have sex with that one person for the purpose of procreation. And then again, it is a representation of a very conservative social mores that it's trying to present as a view of that young people have in a respectful way. And it's sort of saying, yeah, of course, what would be good sexuality is if you got married and then you and your husband had sex to make babies. That would be a good thing.
Yeah. So they do talk about how Ellen, had these really troubled teenage years because she was horny and didn't have any way of expressing this. And then she makes it very clear that when she gets married to Thomas, then her life settles down because now she can have sex. And these demonic visions and nightmares start to happen again when he leaves, and now she can't have sex anymore.
They also make clear, though, that they're not trying to have children. I'm not exactly sure about the details of that process, but they make that clear, and I think they kind of represent that, again, from what I would say is a very conservative perspective, that's like a bad thing. That part of the problem...
I thought they weren't having children because they didn't have money.
That's right. That is the reason.
To me, as a millennial, is extremely relatable.
That's right. That's understandable. That is what they say, and I think that's supposed to be the reason. But it's supposed to be I think they're implying that that's kind of part of the problem. People are always waiting until they're financially stable to have children now, and that's not healthy. You need to be having procreative sex as part of your marriage. And if your marriage...
Just be rich like the Hardings.
That is the moral of the story, that it's your fault and you should feel bad for not having procreative sex. And that's why you're unfulfilled. is because you're waiting to have children. That's your problem.
So when Hutter goes off to do this deal, which his wife really doesn't want him to do, and which he maybe thinks is a little bit strange.
He's not pumped about it.
He's like, well, I need to do this because the commission is going to be huge. And then we will be financially stable. And that's bad. So, like, be financially stable, but also don't try to be. Just be rich.
Yes. Just be... Well,
Okay.
Is this not the moral of our time? If you're not born rich, you should feel bad about that.
Okay. I already know that because I live in this world. Why am I watching a movie about it?
Well, you're watching this movie because you feel that way deep in your heart. And all the other movies are not representing that idea. They're saying that, like, you shouldn't feel bad if you weren't born rich, but that doesn't feel right to you. You feel like you should feel bad if you weren't born rich. So now you made a movie that, like, represents the way you feel.
Okay, I think I just need it's going to be a big shift for me to switch from didactic films to expressive films.
I think that's fair. I mean, I think 1922 is an era of expressionist films, and I think Eggers is trying to connect with that. We got to make sure we don't skip the corset analysis, as this was specially requested for this film.
Okay.
There is this part where they talk about how the doctor says she has to sleep in her corset, and that's good for her health. What's going on there, Libby?
Yeah, and there's also
Is
a
that a real
shot
thing?
where she's like writhing in the bed, and he is tightening the laces of the corset.
Mm-hmm.
So that shot is ridiculous. It's specifically for early 19th century. So early 19th century corsets are kind of at their flimsiest in their history. There is almost no boning. In this period of corsetry, you're probably going to put one on either side of the lacing holes at the back, just so when you lace the corset, it doesn't like shrivel up. So it's there to keep the lacing holes intact. And then you might have some other boning in like one or two places around the torso. But in the 18th century, mid 18th century, and early 18th century, most corsets are fully boned. So all of the fabric contains these pieces of baleen or reed or whatever. And then you start to get corsets made out of one stronger material and more boning later in the 19th century. But I own a corset. I've made a corset based on an original from the early 19th century. It doesn't matter how hard you pull the laces. It's not going to restrain you more because the corset itself is not strong. It's not stronger than your rib cage, and it's not even really stronger than compacted flesh. So you might like be able to squeeze things down a little bit, but the goal of these corsets is to move your boobs as high as possible. You're not trying to get a small waist. So this is really like a bra in that it is a support garment. So yeah, it doesn't matter how hard you pull, you're not going to get smaller or more restrictive, which is what Sievers is going for. And at a certain point, if you pull hard enough, you're just going to pull the laces through their holes.
You're going to break the corset.
Yeah, like the corset lace is sitting in the hole, and that's just going to rip to the outside. Like if you have a pierced ear and you're wearing this is about to be
I don't
gross.
love this metaphor, but okay.
If you have a pierced ear and you're wearing a loop and something catches in the loop, it's going to pull it out.
Great.
That's what's going to happen.
Got it.
So that was pretty ridiculous, and that scene was written by someone who doesn't understand corsets.
Just to get all the prurient parts out of the way, I guess. We also check off the Robert Eggers requirement of having a naked lady in the forest when we have her lead us to the tomb of a different vampire that they need to stake.
Does this naked lady in the forest actually do anything?
Her job, so in the ancient Romanian legends, there's a legend that you had to have a virgin who would ride a horse through a graveyard, and then the horse would stomp its feet on the grave that had the vampire in it.
So she's there for identification,
she's the identification,
not for exorcism.
In the ancient legends, she was not naked. That was not part of it. But that was part of Robert
winter.
Eggers.
She must be very cold.
Yeah. Well, she's got all that frozen potato flakes all over her, so they're going to melt into real potatoes, I guess.
One day I'll be a real potato. Related to how cold it is, I do like... Eggers did solve a problem that I had with the two previous ones, which is once Thomas Hutter... whatever his name is, Jonathan. Once he has figured out that Orlok is a vampire, that he's a freaky undead guy in his coffin, in this film it does actually make sense why he wouldn't immediately leave. And also, like, even before that, Oh no, sorry, he does immediately leave once he finds out. But even before that, Orlok is being very creepy and weird, and it does kind of strain credulity that our leading man never attempts to escape. But in this one, they make it really clear that like his horse has been stolen, it's snowy, we're really far away from everything. So it did make sense that he was like, well, I'm having a bad time in here, but I'm definitely gonna die out there.
Yeah, this version of the story, especially in the first half, the parts that are shared with the other movies most, it does make more sense. Yeah. Like in the 1922 and to some extent 1979 versions, Jonathan or whatever, an initial reaction to the vampire is very unrealistic, and he's just like, this guy seems weird.
I've never met a Romanian
seems
before.
Weird. And this is especially apparent in the scene where, in the 1979 version, where Jonathan and Dracula, thank you, have their bedroom interaction, however we're supposed to interpret that. Because at the beginning, Dracula walks into his bedroom in the middle of the night when Jonathan is in his bedclothes in bed, and Jonathan just sort of stares at him casually, sort of relaxed.
As we were watching that, I did say, are we gonna fuck?
Yeah.
I was like, are they?
That's clearly the sense they are trying to give. It reminds me of that scene from Rocky Horror Picture Show when the doctor was similar energy there. And then like there's this point where he takes one step closer to the bed and suddenly Jonathan freaks out. It's like, whoa, this guy's some sort of vampire or something. So in this version, Jonathan has a realistic overall reaction to the dinosaur to the vampire. Realistic reaction to the vampire. And
this movie did need more dinosaurs. I was really disappointed.
That could have been fun. Dracula, vampire T-Rex, vampire velociraptor. That sounds fun.
Instead of rats bringing plagues, it's velociraptors.
Sounds good.
They would bite a lot of people.
They would bite a lot of people. And how he stays in the castle. This is the one where they make a big deal about Dracula does lock his door and he has to work really hard to break into the door. So you can see that the directors have seen the previous versions and they're taking notes of, okay, I need to emphasize this part. I need to emphasize this part. And we are getting better in that sense.
And Thomas, he doesn't know that he's interacting with a vampire who will wake up at dusk. So I think he's going in there and trying to kill him at dusk, but he's just a couple minutes too late and Orlok wakes up. And then it's not like he finds Orlok in the coffin and then is like, well, I'll just hang out here. And, oh no, Orlok's leaving. I have to warn my wife. He is immediately chased out once he finds
He tries to kill him with the pick and he gets chased out, but then Orlok, the part that doesn't make sense is that Orlok then mind magics Jonathan into letting him out of the crypt. But then
I would think I was too scared.
I think you were too scared for that because that was right after that part, and then it's sort of done in sort of a montage, and like Jonathan is standing outside the door, and Orlok
in this one
shadows himself outside to the other side of the door, and then like snaps his fingers, and that makes Jonathan open the door. But then why wouldn't Orlok kill Jonathan at that time? I guess he was just thinking he was going to leave him there and come back and feast on him later. But then
Jonathan's not a problem.
Clearly, he is a problem. He's the one that told everybody about Orlok, and that's why he dies. He brought the book back, and
that doesn't slow him down.
Or I guess he didn't bring the book back in this one, but still, I guess so. No respect for Jonathan from Orlok. I also think that sequence or the mansion sequence. It's interesting how it does. I feel like kind of play in with the Coppola. Bram Stoker's Dracula. In particular, the first shot, I guess it's not part of that point where Jonathan travels there. It's some part of the opening sequence where we see Dracula's house. It really looks like exactly like the Bram Stoker Dracula house with very square layout, very similar shot there. So I do feel like they're trying to get the setting of the Bram Stoker version, but not necessarily the same character tone. And I mean, that one, it's just Keanu Reeves, and he looks like basically normal Keanu Reeves.
He doesn't sound like any sort of human I've ever interacted with, though. One thing, another correction that Eggers made is that we don't have any shots of Orlok carrying his coffins around, which were in both.
That's a pretty famous shot.
I know, but it's so goofy.
Oh, you don't like that?
It's very goofy.
It's supposed to show that he's very strong. He's so strong.
I know, but like his legs are so long, and it looks like some sort of weird cartoon.
People thought that was really scary in the 20s. They thought that was scary.
Okay, well, not the 2020s.
Yes,
it's the new 20s now,
Fair
David.
Enough.
We have our own plague. We have our own fascists, and we have our own Nosferatu, and he doesn't need to carry his coffin around.
Okay. Well, in the Dracula novel, there's no coffin. He's just a dog. He just jumps off the ship when he's a dog. I still think that knock is the best part of the movie, and I enjoyed all of the parts. I kind of wish it was just a movie about a guy who's doing a bunch of weird occult things.
There are movies like that.
Yeah, but not at this level, not at this budget.
Okay.
Although his character is less interesting, I think, than either of the characters we have before.
I do like
because
that.
It's just evil from the beginning. I guess the idea is he's already been totally corrupted by Dracula's.
I do like that he wasn't so obviously bad from the first second we see him. Like the first two, they're immediately doing their kooky laugh. This guy originally just seems kind of like sexist. Who maybe has the hots for his employee's wife. And then we get the like reveal of the insanity later. So I did appreciate that, because with especially the 22 one, I was like, Hutter, your boss is crazy. You need to get out of there.
He's left by the time the boss is crazy.
No, he's cackling evilly. Yes, he is. He's cackling evilly.
I thought in the first scene with Canuck in the first one, it's more reserved, like you're describing. But
it is more reserved than he is later, but he is still cackling evilly.
We also get the immortal line from Willem Dafoe, who, by the way, that's a double feature double, right? He was in the last one.
Yes.
He was in the
back
Florida
to back.
Project. Back to back. I was overall kind of disappointed in his character. I thought they would have more for him to do.
Yeah.
He has one fun line where he says, I have seen things that would have made Isaac Newton crawl back into his mother's womb. That was fun.
That's goofy and fun. Not sure it was appropriate
Didn't
for
really
the scene.
work in the scene, but you could tell, like, oh, we got to have that one. We got to put that one in there. Also, like, Isaac Newton was pretty into the occult. Yeah. So I don't know, dude.
I mean, that doesn't mean he wasn't scared of it.
Okay, that's true. That's fair.
This isn't saying he wouldn't believe. This is saying he would be scared.
All right. Got it.
Yeah, I thought this character was a little bit underdeveloped and did have weird lines. I think Emma had the worst line situation. She had a bunch of weird lines that she had to deliver.
I mean, her character is just such a stereotypical 19th century lady character, and I feel like she has nothing else to do other than the fact that she is kind of horny, I guess. That's the character. But there's really nothing going on. I thought her performance was good. I kind of feel the same way about Friedrich's performance. Not much there other than fulfilling a stereotype, it felt like.
And doing necrophilia. Necrophilia is not part of the stereotype.
We just normally cut before we get to that part, I guess.
It's implied.
It's implied. He did have some great smoking shots. They had some pretty nice... I wonder if they were digitally altered, but they looked great.
I did like how the sort of default shot of Orlok, once we actually get to see him, is just like a straight on, maybe 7 feet in front of him, like very square shots, and how shots of Ellen start to increasingly be like that once he arrives in Visburg. I think
Markburg, or which one are we at right now?
We're back to Visburg, I think.
We're at Visburg, thank you.
And the last shot, I think, was doing what it wanted to do, and I also found it personally yucky. The second to last shot...
Which one is the last shot?
Lily Rose lying there with a mannequin of a skelly on her.
It was definitely doing what it was trying to do, for sure.
But the shot before that, I actually really liked. I love the composition. It was very, like, early modern.
The one of Nicholas holding her hand?
It's of Willem. He's picked up a cat. He's turned his face to look out the window into the sun, and so you can't see his face. But there is a mirror, and the mirror is capturing his face so we can see him. Which to me just reminded me of like a Dutch Renaissance painting. I loved it.
Yes, I think this shot was clearly very carefully composed. I believe this is also the shot where in the window there is on the other side of the street, there is a cross on top of a building. And so the way the sunlight is coming through the window, the sunlight comes through the window and makes the sign of a cross in sunlight on Willem's shirt, which obviously the two things we know this vampire does not like are crosses and sunlight. So I do think that was a particularly thoughtfully composed shot. And I would almost say in that sense is actually a very traditional style, a very symbolically filled with these objects which have special representation. So it's sort of a connection between the modernist framing and the traditionalist content.
And I do want to complain about the shadow shots again. I think the Murnau film was the best at the Orlok shadows.
I
So
mean, that's the main part of the movie. It is that. Yes,
right.
you're
I
right.
mean,
You're right.
I feel like Eggers, if he had just done
I think
the
they believe that
identical thing, it
the
would have been
modern
better.
audience wouldn't appreciate something so abstract.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like the shot was trying to focus on his hands. Which one? Now the shot's easier, so do your job. If you can't do it, just use CGI. Um, so like it's supposed to be of his hand, which I thought was in a less interesting position than Shrek was holding his hands. But you also can like kind of see the shadow of the rest of his body. It's really non-committal if this is a hand shot or a whole body shot. But I did like that it is just the shadow doing the work, and we don't eventually reveal that just also the man is there.
Yeah, I mean, everyone, of course, including me, as I mentioned, loves the shot of the hand grabbing
The heart.
the heart, Ellen's heart, in
Yeah.
the 1922 version. And in this version, I don't think we get a hand on the heart.
No, they just
we're
fuck.
too busy fucking. But we do instead see the reference to that, which is Orlok's hand sweeping across the whole city, which is
Yes.
kind of a nice sequence.
Which I thought was a really famous shot from the 22 film, but that
don't think
but
so.
that wasn't in it.
I don't think that's from the 22 film. But I
Yeah,
could be
okay,
wrong.
maybe I made that up.
I think it looks exactly like the hand that grabs her
Yeah.
heart, so that's clearly what they're referencing.
Yeah,
but
that is a very good shot.
I don't think they didn't have the budget to pull that off in the 22.
Yeah,
movie.
I thought it was a technical miracle.
No. Of course, I think we are kind of selling just how different Orlok looks in this one compared to the previous versions. They are making the point that like this is historically grounded, and they said that they designed him to look like a Romanian noble person, and they picked all the designs and the hairstyle and the mustache. They said no Romanian noble person was not going to have a mustache. They gotta have a mustache if you're going to be a cool manly guy, and so they definitely made sure to include that element. Did you like the more grounded vampire? You don't care? Again, that kind of goes back to the standard introduced by the Coppola in the Bram Stoker's Dracula. Now that's the traditional vampire is the Bela Lugosi vampire with the makeup
Sort
and
of
the
suave.
cape. But this vampire is long. The stereotype of Dracula is he has long hair and he has a Romanian accent, and he at first seems kind of normal, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, this guy looks way more undead.
Yes,
So yeah, I
yes.
mean, once you finally actually can see him, he is very unpleasant to look at. So I didn't like that, but I do think that is the point. It's effective.
You don't care if it's the real vampire look or the
interpreted
vampire
go
look.
ahead and do something different. Also, I will say, what are we talking about? Maybe like I can't count backwards. But the shot where the sunlight is actually coming in, and he's actually
and killing
dying.
him, yes.
Yes. I thought that was going to be way worse. I was able to actually watch that shot. I think I was afraid of how nasty that was going to be, and it was not that bad.
I kind of agree with you, but I also thought it was kind of technically unimpressive. I mean, I thought it.
I'll take less technically impressive if it's less scary.
Yeah, I think that makes sense for you. I think that in a way, I think that part was really trying to reference the way it looked in the 20s version and in the 70s version, where he just sort of falls down dead. Which makes sense in those versions because that fits the relatively understated special effects style that they're going for intentionally, and the
you can still see Klaus Kinski's body in the later shots.
Just there.
I mean, Max Schreck at least presumably turns into smoke.
I think
he fades out and then is smoke.
So in this version, I kind of hoped that something more. I was hoping for a cool special effect. I don't need cool special effects in every part of a movie, but I thought this would be it. All right, let's see your turn the guy into dust effect, but no.
I think they wanted to have that final shot, which is replicating the shot.
You can show his legs turning into dust.
Okay, just have it be slower.
Yeah, maybe
He's
gradually.
Being consumed.
Give me something here. Just
okay.
Also, then it's really not clear. Like, wait, how did his legs get like this? What happened?
I mean, his whole body is emaciated.
The top of his body is mostly still intact.
No, just the rib cage. It's skin. He's skin and bones, but he has a big rib cage and broad shoulders and skinny legs.
In this version, I don't know if there's anything else we can say first, but in this version, of course, there are several sequences where Lily Rose Depp is being called out by Orlok and being led towards a window or something else. And in all of these sequences where she's being mind controlled by Orlok from afar, she's clearly been directed. Say it with me, everyone. Not to blink.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's totally fine to say this is a shot where we don't want you to blink. I mean, she's sleepwalking, so
That's
there is a
right.
logical reason. I don't know if people blink when they're sleepwalking or not.
They do.
Okay. Do people have their eyes open when they sleepwalk?
Sometimes.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, also, like, magic is happening. I think if it's for some shots and there is a thing that makes sense, then do it.
So we have our first Libby approved do not blink direction then.
Yeah.
All right, we did.
Just don't be like, this character never blinks. That's stupid. Like, in this scene, this character's not going to blink because they're being magicked. So we watched these in the obvious order: 1922, 1979, 2024. David, any reason to vary from that?
I kind of think, I mean, if you're doing it for film history purposes, obviously got to do it in this order.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I say do it backwards.
Okay.
I say do it backwards. I think it's harder to watch silent movies from the 1920s because they're silent. They didn't have the same technology or film culture to support what we think of as a good movie. So that's going to be harder to watch. And I think you might enjoy it more and find it more accessible because sometimes modern audiences especially tend to struggle to follow the stories of silent movies because they're told in a very different style. And so you'll already know the story. That part will be easy. And you'll have lots of things that are referenced to. So if you do feel a bit bored, you can be like, oh, that was like that part in that other movie. So yeah, I think backwards. I say backwards.
I'm fine with whatever as long as 79 is in the middle, because I think that's clearly the worst, and I'm in favor of put the bad thing in the middle and bookend it with good things.
I don't have the same negative reaction to 79. I think overall I enjoyed it. I think it just has great camera work. But yeah, I would say either forwards or backwards, but it's got to be one of those two. For our next episode, we are doing Funny Face from 1957 and Phantom Thread from 2017.
So if you like the discussion of clothing, that will continue.
Or if you enjoyed our review of Barbie from our Barbie Oppenheimer episode, you'll probably like Funny Face because it's kind of the same movie.
Funny Face is maybe the film that we have referenced the most that is not a film that we have actually covered yet. So it's time to do justice to it.
It's time.